she arrived holding a son. "Why didn't you tell me?" Brett Carmichael's voice cracked across the parking lot of the Cascade estate, raw and desperate in a way that made nearby wedding guests turn and stare. He stood there in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, this man who commanded billion-dollar boardrooms without flinching, and his hands were shaking. Sienna Blake adjusted the 12-month-old baby on her hip and met his storm blue eyes with her forest green ones. After 19 months of silence, 19 months of raising their daughter alone, she finally said the words that would detonate his carefully constructed world. "Because you said you never wanted children, Brett. You said the idea of a family made you feel trapped. You walked out of our marriage like it meant nothing. So tell me, what exactly was I supposed to do? Chase after a man who made it crystal clear that his freedom mattered more than anything we built together?" The baby, Harper, reached her tiny hands toward Brett, her sandy curls catching the Oregon sunlight, her blue eyes, his eyes, sparkling with innocent curiosity. "Dada," she said clearly. Sienna's face crumpled. She's never said that before. Not once in 12 months. You're a stranger to her, and somehow she knows. Brett took a step forward, and you could see 19 months of regret, of hollow success, of champagne that tasted like ashes, all of it written across his face. "God, Sienna, she's perfect. She has your nose. My mother's chin. When did you find out?" 3 weeks after you left. Sienna's voice was steady now, forged in the fire of single motherhood. 3 weeks after you told me our marriage was a mistake, and you needed your freedom back. I was standing in a bathroom holding 5 positive pregnancy tests, and the only person I wanted to call was the man who had just destroyed me. Have you ever made a decision so catastrophic that it haunted every quiet moment? Ever thrown away something precious because fear convinced you it was a cage instead of a gift? This is the story of Brett Carmichael, a venture capital titan worth $2.3 billion, who spent 19 months building an empire while the woman he loved built a life without him. And this is the story of Sienna Blake, an artist who turned her heartbreak into strength and her secret into a shield. But before we dive into how these two people ended up in a vineyard parking lot with a baby between them and 19 months of pain to unpack, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from, or just type, "I'm with you, Dr. Phillips," because this story is about to take you on an emotional journey about second chances, about whether people can truly change, and about the price we pay when we choose fear over love. If you believe in redemption, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you will want to see how this unfolds. Now let me take you back to where it all began. 19 months before that parking lot confrontation. 19 months before Harper said her first word to a father who didn't know she existed. The rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Brett Carmichael's Boston penthouse, with a kind of relentless rhythm that matched the emptiness in his chest. It was a Thursday night in March, and at 37 years old, Brett had everything a man was supposed to want. His venture capital firm had just closed a deal that would net him $40 million. His penthouse had been photographed for Boston Magazine's Elite Living issue. His body was maintained by a personal trainer 3 times a week. His wardrobe cost more than most people's cars, and he was absolutely, crushingly, devastatingly alone. He stood at the window in gray sweatpants and a faded MIT t-shirt, his sandy brown hair falling across his forehead because he had stopped caring about styling it when there was no one around to see him. The whiskey in his crystal tumbler had gone warm an hour ago. He couldn't remember the last time he had actually tasted anything he ate or drank. Food was fuel. Whiskey was habit. Everything was just motion without meaning. His penthouse looked like a museum installation titled The Hollow King. Chrome furniture that no one ever sat on. Abstract sculptures worth 6 figures that no one ever admired. A kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances that had never cooked a real meal. Not a single photograph on any surface. Not a book left open. Not a throw blanket draped carelessly over a chair. Nothing that suggested a human being actually lived in this temple to success. Brett picked up his phone for the 10th time that evening and scrolled through his contacts. Past the hundreds of business associates, investors, entrepreneurs seeking funding, society, figures, and women he had dated briefly before the hollowness in his eyes sent them running. He stopped at a name he had been avoiding for months. Tyler Keegan, college roommate, best man at his wedding, the one person who had told him exactly what he was throwing away when he walked out on Sienna. His thumb hovered over the call button. It was 10:47 p.m., too late for a casual call. But Brett had stopped caring about propriety somewhere around his fifth, failed attempt at moving on from the only woman who had ever truly seen him. He pressed call. 3 rings. Then a familiar voice, rough with sleep. Brett? Holy hell, man. It's been forever. Do you have any idea what time it is? I need Sienna's number. The words came out before Brett could stop them, raw and desperate, and completely void of the careful control he usually maintained. There was a long pause on the other end. Brett could hear Tyler sitting up in bed, could imagine him running a hand through his hair the way he always did when processing something complicated. Bro, are you sure that's a good idea? It's been over a year since the divorce was finalized. 19 months, 2 weeks, and 6 days. Brett's voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat, trying to force his usual composure back into place, but it was like trying to hold water in his hands. I know exactly how long it's been, Tyler. I can't stop thinking about her. Every deal I close, every company I launch, every success I achieve, it all feels empty without her there to share it with. He started pacing, his bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floors. The city lights of Boston spread out before him like a circuit board. All those lives, being lived in all those windows, and he felt completely disconnected from all of it. I've tried moving on, Brett continued. God knows I've tried. There was Jennifer, the neurosurgeon, Emma, the tech CEO, that actress whose name I can't even remember now. I've dated some of the most accomplished, beautiful, intelligent women in Boston, and every single time I'm with them, all I can think is that they're not Sienna. Tyler sighed deeply, and Brett could hear the weight of old friendship in it. She changed her number twice, and her address. She really wanted a clean break from all of us, not just you. She cut off everyone who reminded her of what you two had. The words hit Brett like a physical blow to the chest. He sat down heavily on his pristine white couch that no one ever sat on and put his head in his free hand. Sienna Blake. Even her name was like a song he couldn't get out of his head. Waves of auburn hair that caught light like copper fire in the morning sun. Forest green eyes that could see right through every wall he had ever built. That laugh that started soft and built into something uncontrolled and beautiful. The way she would curl up against his chest on Sunday mornings and read him terrible poetry from books she found at estate sales. She had believed in him before he believed in himself, when he was just a guy with an MBA and a dream of disrupting venture capital. She had been the one saying, "You're going to change the entire industry." When his father told him he was wasting his potential, she had been the one holding his face and saying, "Your father is wrong. You're brilliant. You're going to prove everyone wrong." And he had walked away from her like she was disposable. "Please, Tyler." Brett's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "I need to make this right. I need to at least try." Another pause, longer this time. Brett could hear a woman's voice in the background, probably Tyler's wife asking what was wrong. Then Tyler came back on the line. Natalie and Owen's wedding is next Saturday. Big outdoor ceremony at the Cascade Estate outside Portland. You remember Owen from college, right? Anyway, I might have mentioned to someone who mentioned to someone else that you'd been asking about her. Brett's heart stopped. Is she going? I honestly don't know, Tyler admitted. But Brett, if you're going to do this, you better be sure. You better be all in. She was different after the divorce. Quieter, like some essential light went out of her. My wife saw her about 6 months ago, and she said Sienna looked stronger, but sadder, like she had learned to live with a grief that never fully healed. The guilt twisted in Brett's stomach like a knife. He remembered their last conversation, if you could call it a conversation, when only one person was yelling and the other was cold as ice. Sienna had stood in their kitchen, the kitchen where they had cooked terrible dinners together, and laughed and danced and planned futures, and she had begged him to reconsider. We could be so happy, Brett. We could have the family we always talked about. Children who have your eyes and my stubbornness. A house full of noise and mess and love. We could build something that matters more than any business deal. And he had looked at her, this woman who loved him more than he loved himself, and said the cruelest thing he had ever said to another human being. I never talked about a family. You did. I want my freedom back. This marriage feels like a cage, and I need out before I start resenting you for trapping me in it. The look on her face. God, the look on her face. Like he had reached into her chest and ripped out her heart while it was still beating. She had not yelled. She had not thrown things. She had simply gotten very quiet and very still and said, "Okay then." 2 months later, the divorce was final. She had asked for nothing. Not the house they had bought together. Not alimony. Not a single dollar of his rapidly growing fortune. She had walked away with her art supplies and her books and her dignity. And he had convinced himself he had dodged a bullet. For about 3 weeks he felt free. Then the hollowness started. Then every accomplishment tasted like dust. Then he started seeing her in every woman who wasn't her. "Give me her number," Brett said to Tyler. 20 minutes later, Brett sat on his couch staring at his phone screen. Sienna's new number was typed in, but not yet dialed. His hands, steady enough to sign billion-dollar contracts without a tremor, were shaking like he was a teenager calling his first crush. What would he even say? "Remember me? The man who destroyed you? I've decided I made a mistake. That should fix everything, right?" He pressed call before he could talk himself out of it. 1 ring. His heart hammered. 2 rings. He almost hung up. 3 rings. This was a mistake. She probably wouldn't even answer an unknown number. "Hello?" Her voice was softer than he remembered, cautious in a way that made his chest physically ache. There was background noise, music playing softly, what sounded like dishes being put away. Evidence of a life being lived, a life he was not part of. For a moment, Brett couldn't speak. He was overwhelmed by memories of lazy Saturday mornings and whispered conversations. In the dark, and the way she used to say his name like it was something precious. Sienna. Her name came out like a prayer, like a confession, like the answer to a question he had been asking for 19 months. The silence that stretched between them was heavy with everything unsaid. He heard her breath catch, heard what might have been a small sound of pain or surprise. "It's me," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I have no right to call. I know I hurt you in ways I can't take back. But I need to see you." "Grayson." She said his name, his real first name that only she ever used, and it sounded like it physically hurt her to form the syllables. "Why are you calling? Natalie and Owen are getting married next Saturday. I was wondering." He took a shaky breath. "Would you come with me, as my date? I know it's crazy, and I know I don't deserve it, but Sienna, I miss you so much it feels like I can't breathe sometimes." The silence stretched so long, he thought she had hung up. He pulled the phone away from his ear to check, but the call was still connected. He could hear her breathing, could imagine her biting her lower lip, the way she always did when she was fighting tears. "You miss me." Her voice was different now, harder. "You miss me. Brett, you walked out of our marriage. You told me I was trapping you. You said wanting a family made me selfish and short-sighted. And now, 19 months later, you miss me?" "I was wrong," he said simply, "about everything. I was terrified and stupid, and I threw away the best thing in my life because I was afraid of becoming my father." "Your father?" Sienna laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You used that excuse for 3 years of marriage, Brett. Every time I tried to talk about our future, you brought up your father. Every time I suggested we think about starting a family, you shut down. I loved you enough to wait, to give you time to work through it, and you repaid me by walking away. I know. And if I could take it back, if I could go back to that kitchen and choose differently, I would. But you can't. That's not how time works. So come to the wedding with me. Let me show you I've changed." Another long silence. Brett closed his eyes and waited for the rejection he deserved. Then, so faint he almost missed it, "I'll be there." The line went dead before he could respond. Brett sat staring at his phone in shock. She had said yes. After 19 months of silence, After him destroying everything beautiful between them, Sienna Blake had agreed to see him again. He had no idea that at that exact moment, 500 miles away in Portland, Sienna was standing in her loft with tears streaming down her face and a sleeping 12-month-old baby in the next room. A baby with sandy curls and blue eyes. A baby whose existence Brett had no idea about. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of golden Oregon light that made everything look touched by magic. Sienna Blake stood in front of the full-length mirror in her Portland loft, adjusting the dusty rose dress for the 4th time. The color brought out the green in her eyes, just like Brett used to tell her during their marriage when colors still mattered to him, when he still noticed things like that. She had chosen this dress deliberately, though she was not ready to admit that to herself. It was feminine, but not desperate, elegant, but not trying too hard. It whispered, "I've moved on," while secretly screaming, "Do you remember what you lost?" At 30, Sienna possessed a natural elegance that expensive clothes could not create. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and her skin had the healthy glow of someone who spent time outdoors, walking by the river, visiting farmers' markets, living a real life instead of a performative one. She had always been beautiful, but there was something different about her now. A quiet strength in the set of her shoulders, a guardedness in her forest green eyes that had not been there before. A woman who had been broken and had put herself back together, and the cracks were now part of her architecture. "Mama pretty." The tiny voice came from the doorway, and Sienna turned to find Harper pulling herself up against the doorframe. At 12 months old, Harper Carmichael, though Sienna had given her the last name Blake on the birth certificate, was a perfect blend of both her parents. Sandy curls that caught the morning light, inherited from Brett. Forest green eyes, a gift from Sienna. The determined set of her jaw when she wanted something, definitely Brett's stubborn gene. That generous smile that could light up a room. That was all Sienna. "Thank you, sweetheart," Sienna whispered, crossing the room to scoop Harper into her arms. The baby giggled, her small fingers reaching for the silver compass pendant at her mother's throat. It was the only piece of jewelry Sienna had kept from her marriage. Brett had given it to her on their wedding day with a note that said, "You are my true north, I am yours." The irony of still wearing it was not lost on her. The loft was nothing like the sterile penthouse she had shared with Brett in Boston. This was a real home, walls covered with Harper's finger paintings, colorful even if unrecognizable, books scattered on every surface, children's board books mixed with art history and poetry, toys tucked into corners and baskets. A half-finished canvas of Mount Hood sat on an easel by the window, purples and oranges, bleeding together in an interpretation of sunset that she would probably never finish. Her pottery wheel sat in the corner, surrounded by misshapen bowls and cups that Harper loved to touch with curious fingers. Her graphic design work, the thing that actually paid the bills, was confined to a desk overflowing, with sketches and a laptop covered in stickers Harper had enthusiastically applied. This was what life looked like, messy and creative and full of evidence that people actually existed in the space. Her phone buzzed on the counter, and Sienna saw her sister's name flash across the screen. She balanced Harper on her hip and opened the message. "Are you absolutely sure about this? You don't owe him anything. If he breaks your heart again, I will personally fly to Boston and destroy his entire life. I have vacation days saved. I will use them for revenge." Sienna smiled despite the anxiety coiling in her stomach. Her older sister Autumn had been her rock through the divorce, through the lonely nights of pregnancy, through the terrifying first months of single motherhood when Sienna was convinced she was failing at everything. She typed back one-handed while Harper tried to grab the phone. "I need to do this. He deserves to know about Harper, and I deserve closure." The response came immediately. "He deserves nothing, but fine. I'm on standby with ice cream and bail money." Sienna set the phone down and looked at Harper, who was babbling something that sounded almost like words but was not quite there yet. "Mama," Nana for banana, "up," no. These were the syllables that made up their daily communication. Simple, perfect, just the two of them. For 19 months, Sienna had carried the weight of her secret like a stone in her chest. Every time Harper smiled, every time she discovered something new, Every milestone reached and celebrated, Sienna felt the sharp pain of knowing Brett was missing it all. Not because he had chosen to, but because she had made that choice for him. She had her reasons. God knows she had her reasons. When she found out she was pregnant 3 weeks after their divorce became final, she had sat on the bathroom floor of her sister's guest room and cried for 6 hours straight. The man who explicitly said he never wanted children had given her one and then disappeared before she could tell him. What were her options? Call him up and say, "Surprise, remember how you said I was trapping you with the idea of a family? Well, now there's an actual baby coming and you have no choice." Watch him stay out of obligation and grow to resent both her and the child. Watch him become exactly like his emotionally absent father, the very thing he feared most. Or worse, what if he accused her of trapping him on purpose, of getting pregnant to force him to stay? No. She had decided on that bathroom floor that she would do this alone. She would protect her child from the anguish of a father who did not want her. She would build a life filled with so much love that Harper would never feel the absence of the man whose DNA she carried. And for 12 months, that had been enough. She and Harper had built their own little world. Sienna's art career had actually flourished in ways it never had when she was Mrs. Brett Carmichael, venture capitalist's wife. Her pottery sold at local markets. Her graphic design business had steady clients. She taught a weekend watercolor class at the community center, where Harper charmed everyone by attempting to eat the paint. They had a life. A good life. A life that did not include Brett Carmichael. Except now he had called. And he sounded different, broken in a way that the old Brett would never have admitted to. And Sienna, despite every wall she had built, despite every promise she had made to herself about moving on, had said yes to seeing him. She told herself it was about closure, about finally telling him the truth so she could stop carrying this secret, about giving Harper the chance to know her father, even if he turned out to be a disappointment. But deep down, in the place she did not like to examine too closely, there was a tiny flame of something that felt dangerously like hope. What if he had changed? What if the pain in his voice was real? What if this was the universe giving them one impossible chance to fix what had been destroyed? Securing Harper into her car seat an hour later, Sienna's pulse thundered in her ears. The drive to the Cascade estate would take about 60 minutes. 60 minutes to rehearse what she would say, how she would explain, how she would handle the moment when Brett realized the truth. Harper babbled happily in the back seat, completely unaware that she was about to meet her father for the first time, about to change the entire trajectory of 3 lives with her simple existence. Sienna turned on the radio to fill the silence, but she could not focus on the music. Instead, her mind kept replaying the last time she saw Brett, the day the divorce was finalized. They had not even been in the same room. Their lawyers had handled everything. She signed papers in her lawyer's office in Boston. He signed papers in his lawyer's office across town. And just like that, 3 years of marriage dissolved like it had never existed. She had gone home to the temporary apartment she was renting and cried until she threw up. Then she took a pregnancy test because her period was late, and stress could definitely cause that, right? 5 positive tests later, she was faced with a reality that seemed cosmically cruel in its timing. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Meanwhile, at the same moment Sienna was driving toward the wedding venue, Brett Carmichael stood in his hotel suite in Portland, obsessing over details in a way that was completely unlike him. He had changed his outfit 4 times. The charcoal Tom Ford suit, too formal, might make him look like he was trying too hard. The navy blue, too casual, might suggest he did not care enough. The gray, safe but boring. He settled on the charcoal suit with a white shirt, no tie. Approachable but put together, successful but not arrogant. The kind of outfit that said, "I have my life together," which was hilarious because his life was currently held together with duct tape and desperation. His sandy brown hair, usually styled with corporate perfection, showed evidence of nervous finger combing. There were shadows under his storm blue eyes that spoke of a sleepless night spent imagining every possible outcome of today. Best case scenario, Sienna would give him a chance to explain. Worst case, she would look at him with those forest green eyes full of contempt and walk away. and he would have to accept that some things, once broken, could not be fixed. His phone rang, and Tyler's name appeared on the screen. "How are you holding up, man?" Tyler asked without preamble. "Like I'm about to jump out of a plane without checking if I have a parachute," Brett admitted, loosening the collar of his shirt slightly. "What if she's moved on? What if there's someone else? What if she looks at me and feels nothing but anger?" "Then you deal with it," Tyler said bluntly. "But Brett, you need to be prepared for the fact that she might not want what you want. You broke her heart pretty thoroughly. My wife said Sienna cried through our entire Christmas party 2 years ago because someone played the song you guys danced to at your wedding. The words hit their mark." Brett closed his eyes, remembering their wedding. It had been small, intimate, just close friends and family at a vineyard in Napa. Sienna had worn a simple dress and flowers in her hair, and when she looked at him during their vows, he truly believed they would make it forever. "What song was it?" Brett asked, though he knew. He just needed to hear it. Turning page, the sleeping at last version. Brett sat down heavily on the hotel bed. He remembered slow dancing with Sienna in the vineyard as that song played, her head on his chest, his hand in her hair, both of them swaying like they had all the time in the world. He remembered whispering, "I'm going to love you until I forget my own name," and her laughing softly and saying, "That's a low bar, you forget things all the time." "I was an idiot," Brett said quietly. "Yeah, well, join the club. We've all been idiots about something." Tyler's voice gentled. "The question is, what you're going to do about it now. Are you really ready to fight for her, Brett? Because if you're just feeling nostalgic or lonely, stay away. She deserves better than that." "I'm ready," Brett said, and he meant it. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm going to spend every day proving I'm not the same man who walked away." After hanging up, Brett walked to the window overlooking the Willamette River. The water moved steadily, indifferent to human drama, just doing what water does. Somewhere out there, Sienna was getting ready to see him again. The woman who used to leave little notes in his briefcase. The woman who would stay up late when he worked, reading on the couch just to be near him. The woman who believed he could be better than he believed himself to be. And he had walked away from her like she was replaceable. He spent 19 months trying to convince himself that leaving had been the right choice. That marriage was a trap. That commitment was weakness. That he needed to experience life without attachments. He dated other women, beautiful, successful, uncomplicated women who wanted nothing more than a good time and expensive dinners and arm candy for charity events. None of them had ever looked at him the way Sienna had, like he was both her anchor and her adventure. Like he was home. At noon, both of them were driving toward the same destination, carrying the weight of unspoken truths and unfinished conversations. The Cascade Estate sprawled across rolling hills just outside Portland, a popular wedding venue known for its vineyard views and photogenic sunsets. White chairs were arranged in neat rows facing an arbor decorated with roses and eucalyptus. Lanterns hung from trees, ready to twinkle when evening came. A string quartet was setting up near the ceremony space. It was the kind of aggressively beautiful setting that appeared in wedding magazines and Pinterest boards. The kind of place where love was supposed to triumph and happiness was guaranteed. Brett arrived first, immediately scanning the parking area for any sign of Sienna's car. He had no idea what she drove now. During their marriage, she had a little red Honda that she loved, despite its tendency to make concerning noises. He used to tell her to let him buy her something better, and she would always say she liked things with character. Other guests milled around in their wedding finery, greeting each other with hugs and laughter. Brett recognized a few people from college and business circles. He nodded politely, made small talk, all while his attention was completely focused on the parking lot entrance. Then he saw it, a silver Subaru pulling into the lot, practical and sensible, and somehow exactly what he would have expected Sienna to choose. His breath caught as the driver's door opened, and a familiar figure emerged. She looked stunning. The dusty rose dress flowed as she moved, catching the afternoon sunlight. Her auburn hair was loose, waves cascading past her shoulders. Even from a distance, he could see she looked different, stronger, like she had been tested and had come through it, changed, His heart was hammering so hard he thought other people might hear it. But then Sienna opened the back door, and Brett's entire world shifted on its axis. Time seemed to freeze as he watched her lean into the car and unbuckle a car seat. A car seat. She lifted a baby from it with the practiced ease of someone who had done this motion 1,000 times. The child was beautiful. Sandy curls catching the sunlight. Chubby cheeks. Wearing a little white dress with yellow flowers. And when the baby turned her tiny head, when those blue eyes, his eyes, met his across the parking lot, Brett felt his knees literally buckle. He grabbed onto the nearest car for support. The mathematical calculation hit him like a truck. The baby looked about a year old, 12 months. The divorce had been finalized 19 months ago, but they had been separated for 2 months before that. They had still been sleeping together during the separation, those painful nights when they would fall into each other's arms and pretend everything was fine until morning. The timing was perfect. Horrifically, devastatingly, impossibly perfect. Jesus Christ, he whispered, his voice lost in the gentle breeze that rustled through the vineyard. Sienna spotted him across the parking lot. For a moment, neither of them moved. She stood there in her dusty rose dress, the baby, his daughter, oh, God, settled comfortably on her hip like she had been doing this dance for months. Which, Brett realized with growing horror, she had been. Other wedding guests flowed around them like water around stones, chattering about the beautiful weather and the romantic venue, completely oblivious to the silent earthquake happening between two people who had once promised to love each other forever. Sienna took a visible breath, squared her shoulders, and began walking toward him. Each step felt like an eternity. Brett could not move, could not think, could only stare at the child who had his blue eyes and his mother's chin and Sienna's nose. 19 months. No, more than that. He did the math again frantically. If the baby was 12 months old, Sienna would have been pregnant during their divorce. Would have been pregnant when she sat across from him in mediation and asked for nothing. Would have been pregnant when she signed those papers and walked away. She had known. She had known, and she had not told him. Hello, Brett. Sienna's voice was steady, but he could see the rapid pulse at her throat, could rid the anxiety in the way she unconsciously tightened her hold on the baby. They were close enough now that he could see every detail. The baby's dress had tiny embroidered bees. Her little shoes were pink. She was chewing on her fist and staring at him with wide, curious eyes. Sienna. Her name came out hoarse, wrecked. He could not take his eyes off the child, off his daughter. Her name is Harper. Sienna's chin lifted slightly in that familiar gesture of quiet defiance he remembered from their marriage, the one that appeared whenever she was preparing to stand her ground. Harper Rose. Rose, his mother's name, the name he had whispered to Sienna on their honeymoon when she asked what he would want to name a daughter if they ever had one. A conversation that felt like a lifetime ago, a conversation he had dismissed and forgotten, but apparently she had not. How old? The question scraped against his throat like broken glass. 12 months and 1 week. Brett did the math again, hoping desperately that somehow he had been wrong, that there was another explanation, but the numbers were unforgiving, just like the familiar curve of the baby's jaw that looked exactly like his own baby pictures, just like those blue eyes that were the same shade as the ones he saw in the mirror every morning. Mine. The single word contained 19 months of questions, of regret, of desperate hope, and horrible certainty. Tears filled Sienna's forest green eyes, but she did not let them fall. Yes, the world tilted. Brett reached out blindly, his hand finding the hood of a nearby car to steady himself. 12 months. He had missed 12 months of his daughter's life. Her birth, her first smile, her first tooth, her first word, her first everything, all of it, gone, irretrievable, because the woman he claimed to love had hidden it from him. Why? The word exploded from him louder than he intended, causing several nearby guests to glance their way with curiosity. He forced his voice lower, but the pain bled through anyway, raw and jagged. Why didn't you tell me? Harper chose that moment to babble something that sounded remarkably like da-da, reaching her tiny hands toward. Brett, with the fearless curiosity of a child, who did not yet understand that the world could be cruel, that fathers could leave, that love could turn to ash. The sound broke something inside Brett that he did not know was still whole. Without thinking, he stepped closer. Can I hold her?" Sienna studied his face for a long moment, and he saw the war playing out behind her eyes. Protection versus fairness, anger versus compassion, the urge to shield their daughter from potential hurt versus the knowledge that Harper deserved to know her father. Finally, she shifted Harper slightly toward him. Brett reached out with shaking hands and took his daughter for the first time. Harper was solid and warm against his chest, smelling like baby shampoo, and something uniquely her own, sweet and clean and perfect. She stared up at him with those serious blue eyes, completely unafraid, and made a soft cooing sound that went straight to his heart like an arrow. "Oh God," he breathed, his arms instinctively adjusting to support her. Better, muscle memory from somewhere he did not know he possessed. "Oh, Sienna, she's perfect." Tears were streaming down Sienna's face now, 12 months of carefully controlled emotions finally breaking free like a dam giving way. "You said you didn't want children. You said you wanted your freedom. You said the idea of a family made you feel trapped. What was I supposed to do, Brett? Chase after a man who made it crystal clear that this," she gestured to Harper, "was the last thing he wanted? You were supposed to tell me." His voice rose again before he caught himself, not wanting to frighten Harper. "You were supposed to give me the choice. You made your choice when you walked out of our marriage, when you looked me in the eye and said I was trapping you, when you chose your fear over everything we built together. I was scared." The admission tore from him like a physical wound, like something being ripped out of his chest. "I was terrified of becoming my father, of failing you both, of being emotionally absent like he was, of choosing work over family until there was nothing left but resentment and regret. But I never would have abandoned my child, Sienna. Never." Harper had grown quiet in his arms, her tiny fist curling around the lapel of his suit jacket like she was claiming him, like she somehow knew on an instinctual level that this man was important. The sight of her, so small and trusting and perfect, made his chest ache with a love so immediate and powerful it was almost violent. "She looks like you," Sienna whispered, her anger deflating slightly into something softer, more vulnerable. "Everyone says she has my eyes, but everything else is you. Your hair, your stubborn chin, the way she furrows her brow when she's concentrating on something. And she probably has your creativity, thank God." Brett's voice cracked. "Your kindness, your strength. Because, Sienna, you raised her alone for a year, and she's clearly thriving. Look at her. She's confident and curious and happy. You did that." A watery, reluctant laugh escaped Sienna. Her first word was Mama. She loves music, any kind of music. You can play her anything from classical to hip-hop, and she'll stop crying instantly and just listen. She's incredibly social, smiles at everyone, but she's also very observant. Sometimes I catch her just studying people, like she's trying to figure them out. "Like you used to do," Sienna added quietly. "Remember how you would watch people at restaurants and make up stories about their lives?" Brett smiled through his tears, remembering. The venture capitalist and the trophy wife who actually hate each other. The first date that's going badly. The anniversary couple who still hold hands after 40 years. Harper reached up and touched Brett's face with her small hand, her fingers, exploring his jaw, his nose, his cheekbone with surprising gentleness. She was mapping him, learning him, and Brett felt something fundamental shift inside himself. Some equation being rewritten, some priority list being completely demolished and reconstructed. Every deal he had ever closed, every company he had funded, every billion in valuation he had helped create, all of it paled in comparison to this moment. Holding his daughter for the first time, feeling her weight in his arms, seeing himself reflected in her features, understanding with perfect clarity what mattered and what did not. "I kept a journal," Sienna said suddenly, "of everything. Her first smile at 6 weeks, when she started sleeping through the night at 4 months, her first tooth, her first time rolling over. I told myself I was writing it for me, to document everything. But she looked away toward the vineyard, her voice dropping. I think part of me was always writing it for you. The revelation hit Brett like a sucker punch to the gut, even in her anger, even in her hurt and justified resentment even. After everything he had done to her, she had been thinking of him. She had preserved their daughter's milestones like sacred things, like historical records, creating a map of everything he had missed. Can I? He could barely get the words out. Would you let me read it? Before Sienna could answer, a familiar voice called out across the parking lot. Brett, there you are. And Sienna. Oh my God, you look absolutely stunning. Natalie Brooks, the bride herself, approached in a flurry of white lace and excitement. Her eyes immediately dropped to the baby in Brett's arms, and her expression shifted. From joy to confusion, to barely concealed shock in the span of 3 seconds. And who is this little angel? I had no idea you had a baby, Sienna. Brett and Sienna exchanged a look that carried the weight of 12 months of secrets and decisions that could not be undone. A look that said, we are not ready for this conversation to be public. A look that said, how do we explain this when we have not even explained it to ourselves yet? This is my daughter, Harper, Sienna said carefully, her voice taking on the artificially bright tone of someone performing normalcy. She's 12 months old. Natalie's eyes flickered between Brett's shell-shocked expression, the baby in his arms, and Sienna's carefully composed face. Her wedding planner instincts kicked in, reading the room with the skill of someone who had spent months managing family drama and social dynamics. She's absolutely precious, Natalie cooed, but there was a question in her eyes that she was too polite to ask in a parking lot. Well, you two should find your seats. The ceremony starts in about 20 minutes. I'm so glad you both made it. As she hurried away to greet other guests, Natalie glanced back once more, and Brett saw the wheels turning in her head. Later, there would be questions. Later, there would be conversations and explanations. But for now, they had been granted a temporary reprieve. Brett looked down at Harper, who had started to squirm slightly in his arms, wanting her mother back. He reluctantly transferred her back to Sienna, and the loss of her weight against his chest felt like a physical pain. We need to talk, he said quietly. Really talk. Not here, not in a parking lot with a wedding about to start, but soon. Sienna adjusted Harper on her hip, and he saw the exhaustion in her eyes. 12 months of single parenthood. 12 months of carrying this secret. 12 months of doing everything alone. After the ceremony, she agreed. We can find somewhere private. They walked toward the ceremony area in tense silence, other guests nodding politely as they passed. Brett was hyper-aware of every detail, the way Sienna knew exactly how to hold Harper for maximum comfort, the practiced ease with which she adjusted the baby's dress, the fact that she had brought a full diaper bag slung over her shoulder, prepared for every possible need, the whispered reassurances she gave Harper when the baby got fussy at new surroundings. This was her life now, not the life they had planned together in their Boston penthouse, talking about hypothetical futures over expensive wine. This was real, messy, full of responsibility and sacrifice, and the kind of love that showed up at 5 in the morning when a baby cried. They found seats in the back row, Sienna strategically choosing the aisle, in case Harper became fussy and they needed to make a quick exit. As they settled in, Brett noticed other guests stealing glances at them, some curious, some knowing. He realized that to the outside world, they probably looked like a happy family. Mom, Dad, and baby at a wedding. Picture perfect. The irony was devastating. Does she usually do well at events like this? Brett asked quietly, watching Harper examine the wedding program with intense concentration, trying to put it in her mouth. She's actually very social. She loves music and crowds, Sienna replied, then seemed to catch herself sharing intimate details about their daughter. She'll be fine. The string quartet began playing, and wedding guests settled into their seats. Harper's eyes went wide at the sound of the violins, her whole body going still with focus. Brett watched her reaction, mesmerized by every expression that crossed her small face. The processional began, and one by one, bridesmaids in flowing blue dresses made their way down the aisle. Then the music shifted, and everyone stood as Natalie appeared at the back of the aisle, stunning in her flowing white gown, her father beaming beside her, As Natalie walked past their row, Harper reached out toward her with a happy babble, apparently fascinated by all the white fabric and sparkling details. The movement drew Natalie's attention, and she smiled at Harper before her eyes met Brett's, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, a silent promise of conversations to come. "She likes pretty things," Sienna murmured, gently redirecting Harper's reaching hands. "Like her mother," Brett said without thinking, then immediately tensed, waiting for Sienna's reaction. She glanced at him sharply, something unreadable flickering across her face before she turned back to the ceremony. But he thought he saw the ghost of a smile, quickly hidden. The officiant, an older man with a warm voice, began speaking about love and commitment and the courage it takes to promise forever to another person. Every word felt like a knife twist in Brett's chest. He had stood at an altar once, making those same promises to the woman sitting beside him. And then he had broken every single one. "Marriage is not just about the moments when love feels easy," the officiant continued. "It's about choosing each other when love feels hard, when fear tries to make you run, when life presents you with challenges you never expected to face. True love is a choice made new each day." Brett felt Sienna's sharp intake of breath beside him. He did not dare look at her, did not trust what his face might reveal. Owen was crying as he spoke his vows, his voice breaking as he promised to be Natalie's partner through whatever life brought them. "I promise to choose courage over fear. I promise to choose love over pride. I promise to never let anything come between us and the family we're going to build together." The words hit Brett like a physical blow. Choose courage over fear. He had done the exact opposite. When faced with the prospect of building a life with Sienna, of becoming a father, of being responsible for another person's happiness, he had chosen fear. He had run. Harper had grown quiet during the ceremony, mesmerized by the music and the solemn beauty of the moment. She settled against Sienna's chest, one tiny hand tangled in her mother. Silver compass necklace, watching everything with wide, curious eyes. Brett studied them together, mother and daughter, and felt the full weight of everything he had thrown away. The family he could have had, the mornings waking up to baby laughter, the exhausted nights walking a colicky infant, the first steps he would have witnessed, the life he had been too afraid to choose. As Owen and Natalie exchanged rings, promising to love each other through sickness and health, joy and sorrow, good times and bad, Brett found himself studying Sienna's profile. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched their friends make the promises she and Brett had once made to each other, promises that had crumbled under the weight of his fear. Without thinking, he reached over and gently wiped away a tear from her cheek. She turned to look at him, startled, and for a moment they were transported back in time, back to when touching her was as natural as breathing, when he had the right to comfort her, when they were partners facing the world together. "I'm sorry," he whispered, and they both knew he was not just apologizing for the tear. "You may now kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Harper startled at the sudden noise, her face scrunching up in preparation for tears. Instinctively, both Brett and Sienna reached for her. His hand covered hers on Harper's back, and the contact was electric, a jolt of memory and possibility. Brett made soft shushing sounds he did not know he knew how to make, and to his amazement, Harper calmed. She turned those serious blue eyes on him, studying his face like she was solving a complex equation. "She likes you," Sienna said softly, and there was surprise in her voice. Genuine surprise. "Is that a bad thing?" "I don't know." Sienna's voice was barely audible over the recessional music. "I honestly don't know anything anymore." As the newlyweds processed back down the aisle, glowing with joy and promise, the guests began rising for cocktail hour. Brett and Sienna sat for a moment longer, neither quite ready to move, both overwhelmed by the weight of everything between them. Then Tyler appeared beside their row, and his eyes went wide as he took in the scene. Brett sitting with Sienna and a baby who very clearly had Carmichael genes written all over her. "Whoa," Tyler breathed. "Brett, is she? Are you? Holy hell." "Yes," Brett confirmed, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's mine, and I had no idea Until about 30 minutes ago. Tyler ran a hand through his dark hair, processing the bombshell. Jesus, Sienna. You've been raising a baby alone for a year? 12 months, Sienna corrected stiffly, standing and adjusting Harper on her hip in a clear signal that this conversation was over. And I wasn't alone. I had my sister, my friends, people who actually showed up. We managed just fine. The defensive edge in her voice made Brett's chest ache. This was what he had reduced her to. A woman who felt the need to prove she did not need anyone, least of all him. That's not what I meant, Tyler said gently. He had always been the peacemaker in their college group, the one who could diffuse tension with careful words. I just meant, God, Sienna, you must have been so scared. The kindness in his voice seemed to crack something in Sienna's carefully maintained armor. Tears spilled over again, and this time she did not try to stop them. I was terrified every single day. When I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after our divorce was final. When I decided to keep the baby. During labor when I had no one to hold my hand. The first night home when she wouldn't stop crying, and I thought I was the worst mother in the world. Every fever, every milestone, every moment, I second-guessed every decision I was making. But Harper and I, we figured it out together. Each word was like a dagger in Brett's heart. He had been living his consequence-free life in Boston, closing deals and dating casually and building his empire, while Sienna had been facing the greatest challenge of her life completely alone. Why didn't you call me? Tyler asked the question Brett was too afraid to voice. Or any of us. We would have helped, because he made it very clear that he didn't want a family, Sienna replied, not looking at Brett. And I couldn't bear the thought of him feeling trapped or obligated. I didn't want him to stay for the baby if he didn't want to stay for me. I didn't want Harper to grow up sensing that her father resented her existence. You should have given me the choice, Brett said quietly, finding his voice. What choice? Sienna's voice rose slightly, causing Harper to fuss and other guests to glance their way as they moved toward the cocktail reception. The choice to reluctantly pay child support while building your empire? To be a part-time father who saw Harper every other weekend out of obligation? To marry me again out of duty and spend the rest of our lives making each other miserable? The choice to prove I could be better than I was, Brett shot back, his own frustration surfacing. The choice to grow up, to face my fears, to become the man you and she deserved instead of the coward who ran away. You had that choice during our marriage, Sienna said, her voice breaking. I begged you to talk to me about your fears instead of shutting down. I would have worked through anything with you, Brett, anything, except being abandoned. Harper, sensing the rising tension in both her parents' voices, began to cry in earnest now. Instinctively, both Brett and Sienna reached for her, their hands colliding as they tried to comfort their daughter. The touch sent electricity through both of them, muscle memory of 1,000 gentle moments they had once shared. She's hungry, Sienna said, pulling back and automatically shifting into mom mode. I need to feed her. Is there somewhere private we can go? The bridal suite in the main house is probably empty right now, Tyler offered, reading the situation perfectly. Natalie won't need it until later for photos. I can show you where it is. They made their way through the cocktail reception, past groups of laughing guests with champagne flutes and appetizer plates. Brett nodded absently at acquaintances who called his name, his mind entirely focused on the woman beside him and the baby in her arms who kept reaching for his tie with curious fingers. The Cascade Estate's main house was a renovated farmhouse with exposed beams and wide plank floors. Tyler led them up a curved staircase to the second floor and opened a door to reveal a spacious bridal suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the vineyard. Plush chairs were arranged around a vanity. A small sitting area with a couch offered privacy. I'll guard the door, Tyler said quietly. Take all the time you need. After he left, closing the door behind him with a soft click, Brett and Sienna were alone together for the first time in 19 months. The silence was heavy, loaded with everything they needed to say and did not know how to start. Sienna settled into one of the armchairs, positioning Harper for nursing. With the practiced efficiency that spoke of doing this hundreds of times, she draped a light blanket over herself and Harper, creating a private space within the space. Brett remembered seeing Sienna do this once during their marriage, helping her sister with a newborn nephew at a family gathering. He had made some comment about how natural she looked with a baby, and she had smiled hopefully, saying she could not wait for their turn. And he had changed the subject, uncomfortable with the longing in her voice, afraid of the future she was painting. Now, watching her nurse their daughter with such tenderness and competence, he felt the full weight of everything he had thrown away. "Tell me about her," he said softly, taking the chair across from them. "Tell me everything I missed." From the beginning. Sienna looked at Brett for a long moment, her forest green eyes searching his face, like she was trying to determine if he was truly ready for what he was asking, if he could handle the weight of everything he had missed. Finally, she took a breath and began. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Brett said without hesitation. "When you found out you were pregnant, what it was like being alone during the pregnancy, the birth, her first months. I want to know what her favorite foods are, what makes her laugh, what she's afraid of. I want to know our daughter." Something in Sienna's expression softened at his use of the words, "our daughter." It was the first time he had claimed Harper out loud, and the sound of it seemed to shift something in the air between them. "I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized," Sienna began quietly, her hand gently stroking Harper's back as the baby nursed. "I had been feeling off for a while, but I thought it was just stress, depression, the aftermath of everything falling apart. But my period was late, and my sister convinced me to take a test." She paused, her eyes distant with memory. "I took 5 tests, all positive. I just sat on the bathroom floor of Autumn's guest room and stared at those little pink lines for hours. The only person I wanted to call was you, the man who had just told me he never wanted children, the man who had walked away from our marriage because I was, in your words, trying to trap you into a life you never agreed to." Brett flinched at his own words thrown back at him. "I never should have said that. You weren't trapping me. I was panicking." "You were cruel," Sienna corrected, her voice steady but laced with old pain. "You took my desire for a family and weaponized it, made me feel like wanting children with my husband was some kind of manipulation instead of a natural hope for our future. You're right, I was cruel, and I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't." Harper had finished nursing and was drowsing against Sienna's chest, milk-drunk and peaceful. Sienna adjusted her clothing and shifted Harper to her shoulder, patting her back gently. The baby let out a small burp, and despite the heavy conversation, both parents smiled. "She loves bananas," Sienna continued, her voice softening as she talked about their daughter. "She's obsessed with them, calls them Nana. She hates green beans with a passion that seems unreasonable for someone so small. She's fascinated by music, any kind of music. Classical, jazz, pop, it doesn't matter. She'll stop whatever she's doing and just listen with this look of complete concentration." Brett absorbed every detail like he was dying of thirst, and these small facts were water. He watched Harper's chest rise and fall with sleep, her tiny fist curled against Sienna's collarbone. "She's incredibly social," Sienna went on, "smiles at everyone, but she's also very observant. Sometimes I catch her just studying people, watching how they move and interact, like she's trying to figure out how the world works. She taught herself to crawl by watching videos on my tablet. I swear she understood what she was seeing and decided to replicate it. Smart like her mother," Brett said. "Analytical like her father. Stubborn like both of us." They shared a look that was almost like their old easy intimacy, that ability to communicate entire conversations with just a glance. But then reality crashed back down, and Sienna looked away. "What was the pregnancy like?" Brett asked quietly. "Were you sick? Did you have complications? Were you scared?" "I was terrified," Sienna admitted. "Morning sickness was brutal. I couldn't keep anything down for the first 3 months. I lost weight instead of gaining it. I was still teaching my watercolor classes, and I would have to run out in the middle of lessons to throw up. My students thought I had the flu for weeks." She shifted Harper to a more comfortable position. "I couldn't afford good prenatal vitamins at first. I was living with Autumn, trying to save money, building my freelance design business. Every doctor's appointment was a financial stress. Every ultrasound. I kept a spreadsheet of costs, trying to figure out how I was going to afford the birth, let alone raising a child. Brett's hands clenched into fists. You should have told me. I would have helped financially even if nothing else. Would you? Sienna challenged. Or would you have accused me of getting pregnant on purpose to get your money? Would you have demanded a paternity test? Would you have had your lawyers draw up some agreement that gave you minimal obligation? The questions hit like slaps because Brett knew she was right to ask them. The man he had been 19 months ago might have done exactly that. Might have seen her pregnancy as a trap sprung too late. Might have protected his assets before his conscience. I'd like to think I would have been better than that, he said quietly. But honestly, I don't know who I was back then. I was so consumed by fear of becoming my father that I became worse than him. Your father at least stayed, Sienna said. He was emotionally absent, but he was physically present. You just left. The words were harsh, but fair. Brett's father had been a workaholic who barely knew his son's name, but he had never abandoned the family. He had shown up to dinners even if he spent them on his phone. He had been at graduations even if he left early. Brett had not even given Sienna that much. Tell me about the birth, Brett said, needing to know even though it would hurt. Please. Sienna's eyes filled with tears. 14 hours of labor. Autumn was there, holding my hand, but all I could think was that you should be there. That you should be the one timing contractions and telling me to breathe and being terrified alongside me. I had a doula because I couldn't afford an epidural until the very end. And the pain was… She shook her head. I've never felt anything like it. She looked down at Harper, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the story being told. But then they put her on my chest, and Brett, I've never felt love like that in my life. It was terrifying and overwhelming and perfect all at once. She barely cried when they handed her to me. She just stared at me like she was trying to memorize my face. And I looked at her and saw you, your jawline, your serious expression, and I cried because you were missing this. Because no matter how angry I was at you, you deserved to meet your daughter. Why didn't you call me then? Brett's voice broke. Right then, in that moment. Why didn't you call? Because I was afraid, Sienna whispered. Afraid you would reject her. Afraid you would confirm every fear I had that you truly didn't want this. And I couldn't bear the thought of her ever feeling unwanted. So I decided I would love her enough for two parents. That I would build a life so full of joy that she would never feel the absence of her father. But she does have a father, Brett said urgently, leaning forward. I'm here. I'm right here. And I know I missed the first 12 months. And I know that's unforgivable. But Sienna, please don't take the rest of her life away from me. Don't take the rest of your life away from me. This isn't about us getting back together, Sienna said firmly, though her voice from me. This isn't about us getting back together, Sienna said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. This is about you having a relationship with your daughter if you're truly committed to being her father. I am. I swear to you, I am. You say that now. But Brett, being a parent isn't just the cute moments and milestone celebrations. It's 3M. Fevers and teething pain and toddler tantrums. It's putting someone else's needs before your own every single day for the rest of your life. Your entire life has been about building your empire, about freedom, about not being tied down. Can you really tell me you're ready to be second place to a toddler? Yes, Brett said without hesitation, because she's not making me second place. She's showing me what first place actually looks like. I spent 19 months at the top of my field feeling like I was drowning. Every success felt empty. Every achievement felt meaningless, because I was building the wrong empire. I was measuring the wrong metrics. Words are easy, Brett. Actions are what matter. Then let me prove it. Let me show you I've changed. Before Sienna could respond, Brett's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, intending to silence it, but the name on the screen made him freeze. Madison Price, the woman he had been casually seeing for the past 2 months. The text preview was visible on the lock screen. Missing you at the wedding. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I have something exciting to tell you. Sienna saw it. Brett watched her face close off. Every bit of softness that had crept into her expression during their conversation vanishing like it had never existed. "Who's Madison?" Her voice was dangerously calm. Brett's stomach dropped. It's not serious." "Oh my God." Sienna laughed, but there was no humor in it, only bitter recognition. "You called me and asked me to this wedding while you're dating someone else? This is exactly what I was afraid of, Brett. You haven't changed at all. You're still the same man who thinks he can have everything without committing to anything." "It's not like that," Brett said desperately. "Madison and I aren't serious. We've been on maybe 6 dates. It's casual. I didn't even think about her when I called you." "That's the problem." Sienna's voice rose enough that Harper stirred against her shoulder. You don't consider how your actions affect other people. You wanted to see me, so you called, and it didn't even occur to you that you might be leading on another woman while trying to reconnect with your ex-wife." "I'll end it," Brett said immediately, already typing on his phone. "Right now. I'll text her and end it." "Don't you dare," Sienna snapped. "Don't you dare use our daughter as an excuse to treat another woman badly. Madison, whoever she is, deserves better than being discarded via text because it's suddenly convenient for you. Then what do you want me to do?" "I want you to figure out what you actually want instead of just reacting to situations," Sienna said, standing and gathering Harper's things. "I want you to be honest with Madison. I want you to be honest with yourself. And until you can do that, I don't think we should do this." She was moving toward the door, and Brett felt panic rising in his chest. "Wait, please, don't leave. We need to talk about Harper, about custody, about how we move forward." Sienna paused with her hand on the doorknob, her back to him. "I kept a journal of everything, every milestone, every first, every moment I wished you were there to see. It's at my loft in Portland. If you really want to know what you missed, if you're truly committed to being part of her life, you can read it." She turned to face him, and the tears streaming down her face were matched by the steel in her voice. "But understand something, Brett. Those memories aren't yours to claim. They're mine. I lived them alone. Reading about them won't make you her father. Being present from now on will. Proving through consistent action over time that you're not going to disappear again when things get difficult, or when a better opportunity comes along. That's what will make you her father." Harper chose that moment to wake fully, her blue eyes blinking open. She looked around the unfamiliar room with confusion, then her gaze landed on Brett. And instead of crying or reaching for her mother, she smiled, a bright, beautiful smile that showed her tiny teeth and crinkled her nose. "Dada," she said again, clearer this time, reaching for him with both hands. Sienna made a sound like she had been punched in the gut. That's the second time she's said it. In 12 months, she's never called anyone Dada. And now, twice in one day, she says it to a man she just met. "Maybe she knows," Brett said softly, his own voice thick with emotion. "On some level, maybe she knows I'm her father. Or maybe she's a baby who's saying sounds that don't mean anything yet," Sienna countered. But her voice lacked conviction. "Either way, this doesn't change anything. You still have to prove you're going to stay." The door opened and closed, and just like that, Sienna and Harper were gone. Brett stood alone in the bridal suite, the scent of baby shampoo and Sienna's perfume still hanging in the air, and put his head in his hands. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Madison. "Everything okay? You've been quiet." Brett stared at the message, then at the door Sienna had just walked through. Then he made a decision. He texted Madison back. "Can we meet for dinner tomorrow? There's something important I need to talk to you about." Her response came quickly. "Of course. Everything all right?" He typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on, "We'll talk tomorrow." "I'm sorry." Then he sat down heavily on the couch and let himself cry. Not the careful, controlled tears of a man trying to maintain dignity, but the ugly, gasping sobs of someone whose entire world had just been dismantled and rebuilt in the span of an hour. He had a daughter, a beautiful, perfect 12-month-old daughter who said Dada and reached for him like she knew him. And he had missed everything. Her birth, her first smile, her first laugh, her first tooth. All of it gone because he had been a coward, and because Sienna had been protecting Harper from his cowardice. And the worst part was that he could not even blame Sienna for hiding the pregnancy. He had made it crystal clear that children were a trap, that family was a cage, that he wanted his freedom more than he wanted a future with her. She had taken him at his word and made a decision to protect their child from a father who had explicitly said he did not want to be a father. There was a soft knock on the door, and Tyler poked his head in. "You okay, man?" "No," Brett said honestly. "I'm the furthest thing from okay. I have a daughter I didn't know existed. The woman I love hates me, and I don't know how to fix any of this." Tyler came in and sat down next to him. "You start by being honest. With Madison, with yourself, with Sienna, and then you show up. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. What if Sienna won't let me?" "She just told you about the journal, didn't she?" Tyler pointed out. "She told you where she lives. She didn't have to do that. She could have left and disappeared again. But she gave you a way in. That's not nothing, Brett." Brett looked at his friend, this man who had been trying to tell him for years that he was making a mistake. "I really screwed up, didn't I?" "Spectacularly," Tyler agreed. "But the question isn't whether you screwed up. It's what you're going to do about it now. What would you do?" Tyler thought for a moment. "I'd end things cleanly with Madison. I'd go to Sienna's place and read that journal and understand the full weight of what I missed. And then I'd start showing up, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with presence, with consistency, with proof that I was willing to do the hard work of earning back trust." Brett nodded slowly. He could do that. He would do that. He had spent 19 months building the wrong empire. It was time to build the right one. The wedding reception was in full swing when they finally rejoined the party. Brett moved through it in a daze, making small talk with old college friends, congratulating Owen and Natalie, going through all the motions of a normal wedding guest. But his mind was entirely focused on one thing. He had to fix this. He had to prove to Sienna that he was not the same man who had walked away. He had to become the father Harper deserved. And it all started with being honest. The next evening, Brett sat across from Madison Price at an upscale seafood restaurant in Boston. She looked beautiful as always, her platinum blonde hair sleek, her designer dress perfect, her makeup flawless. She was a successful marketing executive, intelligent and ambitious, and exactly the kind of uncomplicated woman he had thought he wanted. But as he looked at her across the candlelit table, all he could think was that she was not Sienna, and she deserved better than being second choice to a ghost. "Madison, I need to be honest with you," Brett began. "This isn't working." She set down her wine glass carefully, her blue eyes studying his face. "This is about your ex-wife, isn't it? I saw the way you were at the wedding yesterday. You were somewhere else the entire time." Brett had not realized Madison was at the wedding. He had been so focused on Sienna and Harper that he had not noticed anyone else. That probably told him everything he needed to know about where his heart was. "I found out I have a daughter," Brett said quietly. "She's 12 months old. I didn't know she existed until yesterday. And yes, her mother is my ex-wife." Madison's eyes widened. "Oh, wow. That's a lot." "I'm sorry," Brett continued. "I should have been more honest with you from the beginning. I told myself I was over Sienna, but I wasn't. I'm not. And now there's Harper, and everything has changed." To her credit, Madison did not make a scene. She simply nodded, processing. "I appreciate you being honest. For what it's worth, I always knew part of you was somewhere else. You were never fully present when we were together. I told myself it didn't matter because we were keeping things casual, but..." She smiled sadly. "I guess I was hoping you'd eventually be present." "You deserve someone who is present from the start," Brett said. "Someone who looks at you the way I look at, the way I should look at the person I'm with." Madison reached across the table and squeezed his hand briefly. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Brett. You're a good man, but you've never been fully in any conversation we've had. Part of you has always been somewhere else." They parted ways amicably, and Brett walked back to his hotel feeling lighter despite the sadness of the conversation. Tyler had been right. Honesty was the first step. The next step was harder. 3 days later, Brett stood outside Sienna's building in Portland, his finger hovering over the buzzer for Unit 4B. It was a charming red brick building with window boxes full of flowers. The kind of place where neighbors actually knew each other's names, so different from his sterile Boston penthouse where he had never spoken to a single neighbor. He pressed the buzzer. There was a long pause. Then Sienna's voice crackled through the intercom. "Yes, it's me, Brett. I ended things with Madison. Properly. And I was hoping I could read the journal. If the offer still stands." Another pause that felt like an eternity. Then the buzzer sounded, granting him entry. He climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, his heart hammering. When he reached Unit 4B, the door was already open. Sienna stood in the doorway wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked beautiful and exhausted and real. "She's sleeping," Sienna said quietly, stepping back to let him in. "She usually naps for about 2 hours in the afternoon." Brett stepped into the loft and was immediately struck by how different it was from any space he had ever inhabited. The living room flowed into an open kitchen. Toys were scattered across a colorful rug. Books were stacked on every surface. Children's board books mixed with art history and poetry. Finger paintings covered the refrigerator. A half-finished canvas of Mount Hood sat on an easel by the window. There was a pottery wheel in the corner, surrounded by misshapen bowls. A desk overflowing with sketches and design work. Evidence everywhere of a life being lived fully and creatively and messily. "This is beautiful," Brett said, and he meant it. "Your home. It's actually a home." Sienna looked surprised by the compliment. "It's small and messy and probably not what you're used to. It's perfect. It's everything our place in Boston wasn't. This is real." Sienna moved to a bookshelf and pulled out a thick leather-bound journal. She held it against her chest for a moment, like armor. "I started this the day I found out I was pregnant. Some entries are just a few lines. Others are longer. More detailed, Brett. Some of what I wrote, I was angry. I was scared. I was exhausted. I wasn't kind to you in these pages. I don't deserve kindness," Brett said quietly. "No," Sienna agreed, her voice sad. "You don't." She held out the journal. "Will you stay while I read it?" Brett asked. "Or would that be too hard?" "I can't," Sienna said, grabbing her keys from a hook by the door. "I can't watch you discover everything you missed. It's too painful. I'm going to my sister's for a few hours. There are bottles in the fridge if Harper wakes up. Her schedule is on the wall in the kitchen. Let yourself out when you're done, and leave the journal on the coffee table." "Sienna, wait." She paused at the door, not turning around. "Thank you," Brett said, "for this, for letting me in. I know you didn't have to." "You're her father," Sienna said quietly. "She deserves to know you, even if I'm not sure you deserve to know her." The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Brett was alone in his ex-wife's home with a journal full of everything he had destroyed and everything he had lost. He settled onto her couch, soft and well-worn with a baby blanket draped over one arm, and opened the journal to the first page. Sienna's handwriting, familiar and beloved, filled the pages. March 15th, I'm pregnant. 3 weeks since Brett left, and I'm pregnant. I took 5 tests to be sure. I keep staring at the little pink lines and wondering if this is the universe's idea of a joke. The man who said he never wanted children gave me one and then disappeared before I could tell him. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to call him, but what would I say? Remember how you left because you wanted freedom? Well, surprise, you're going to be a father. He'd think I was trying to trap him. Maybe I am. Maybe this is cosmic justice. I'm scared. I'm so terrified I can barely breathe. Brett's hands were shaking as he turned the page. The entries continued, documenting her first doctor's appointments, her morning sickness, her struggle to afford prenatal vitamins while living with her sister and building her freelance business. April 2nd. Heard the heartbeat today, strong and fast like a tiny drum. The doctor said everything looks perfect. I cried in the parking lot after, wishing Brett was there to hear it too. I'm starting to show, just a little bump that I can hide under loose shirts. I touch it sometimes and wonder if she'll have his eyes or mine. I think it's a girl. I don't know why, but I do. April 20th. Had to tell my principal today. She was surprisingly supportive. Said I could work until I'm ready to take leave, but I'll need to figure out daycare. How do single mothers afford anything? I did the math last night and cried. Brett could solve all my financial stress with one check, but I won't ask. I won't trap him. I won't be the woman he accused me of being. May's entries detailed her growing belly, her exhaustion, her fears about doing this alone. June brought preparations, painting a nursery yellow because she did not want to know the sex, buying a crib secondhand, practicing breathing techniques by herself in childbirth classes while surrounded by couples. July 4th, Independence Day. How fitting. 7 months pregnant and officially independent, whether I want to be or not. Watched fireworks from Autumn's window and felt her kicking like she was trying to applaud. I wonder if Brett is watching fireworks somewhere, celebrating the independence he wanted so badly. August was harder to read. Entries about false labor, about her terror that something would go wrong and she would face it alone, about her sister taking time off work to be with her. August 15th. She's here. Harper Rose Blake, born at 3:47 a.m. after 14 hours of labor, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, perfect in every way. She has Brett's jawline and his serious expression, but my eyes. She barely cried when they put her on my chest, just stared at me, like she was trying to memorize my face. I've never felt love like this. It's terrifying and overwhelming and perfect. I wish Brett could see her, even after everything, even though he destroyed me. I wish he could see how beautiful she is. She deserves to be seen by both her parents. Brett had to stop reading. His vision was blurred by tears, his chest so tight he could barely breathe. He had missed it. He had missed the birth of his daughter, missed those first precious moments because he had been too much of a coward to face his fears. The entries continued. Sleepless nights, feeding schedules, Harper's first smile at 6 weeks, her first laugh at 3 months. Sienna documented everything with the dedication of someone who understood that memories were precious things that could be lost if not carefully preserved. October 30th. Harper rolled over today for the first time. I was changing her diaper and suddenly she flipped onto her tummy, looking so proud of herself. I clapped and cheered, and she laughed, like she knew she'd done something amazing. I took 12 pictures and a video, but none of them capture how perfect the moment was. I caught myself reaching for my phone to call Brett and tell him. Old habits. Will I ever stop wanting to share these moments with him? December 1st. First tooth. Harper was fussy all day, drooling everywhere, and I finally felt the tiny sharp edge poking through her bottom gum. She bit my finger and looked so surprised when I yelped. Even teething, she's gorgeous. I wonder if Brett is thinking about us at all, if he ever wonders what he's missing. December 25th. Harper's first Christmas. Autumn came over, brought way too many presents. Harper was more interested in the wrapping paper than the toys. She sat in a pile of shredded paper, laughing and trying to eat it, and I thought my heart might burst. I bought Brett a Christmas card. I wrote it and sealed it and addressed it, then threw it away. What would I say? Merry Christmas from the family you didn't want? The recent entries were shorter, documenting Harper's growing personality, her attempts to crawl, her babbling that sometimes sounded like real words. March 10th. Harper said something that sounded like Mama today. Autumn insists it was just babbling, but I swear she was looking right at me when she said it. I cried happy tears for an hour after. March 28th. Brett called. After 19 months of silence, he called. His voice sounded different. Older, sadder, maybe. He asked me to go to Owen and Natalie's wedding with him. I said yes, before I could stop myself. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it's time Harper met her father. Maybe it's time I stopped carrying this secret alone. Or maybe I'm just a fool who never learned how to stop loving a man who doesn't love me back. The final entry was dated the day after the wedding. April 16th. I told him. I showed him his daughter and watched his world fall apart. He looked at Harper like she was a miracle and a tragedy all at once. He cried when she said, "Dada." I've never seen Brett cry, not once in our entire relationship. He cried, holding our daughter. I'm terrified to hope, but I can't help it. The way he looked at her, the way he held her, like she was the most precious thing he'd ever touched. Maybe people really can change. Maybe some mistakes can be forgiven. But I won't risk my heart again unless I'm absolutely sure. Harper deserves a father who won't disappear when things get difficult. I deserve a partner who chooses courage over fear. I just don't know if Brett is capable of being either of those things. Brett closed the journal, overwhelmed by the weight of everything he had missed, everything Sienna had endured alone. He pulled out his phone and began typing a text message. I read every word. I'm sorry isn't enough and never will be, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you both deserve. The father she needs. The partner you should have had from the beginning. He hesitated, then added, I love you, Sienna. I love our daughter. And I'm not going anywhere, ever again. Just as he hit send, he heard a soft cry from down the hall. Harper was awake. Brett stood, frozen for a moment. This would be his first time alone with his daughter. What if he did something wrong? What if he scared her? What if he proved Sienna right, that he was not capable of being what Harper needed? The crying intensified, and suddenly his paralysis broke. This was his daughter, and she needed someone. Even if he did not know what he was doing, he had to try. He found her in a small nursery, painted soft sage green with white trim. Cloud-shaped mobile hung over the crib. Family photos on the dresser. A rocking chair by the window with a worn stuffed elephant perched on the arm. Harper was standing in her crib, her sandy curls matted against one side of her head from sleep, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks. Hey there, sweetheart, Brett said softly, approaching the crib slowly. It's okay. Daddy's here. The word felt strange on his tongue, but also completely natural. Harper looked up at him with those familiar blue eyes, her crying tapering off to confused. Hiccups as she tried to place this man who looked familiar but was not her mother. Did you have a good nap? Brett asked, reaching into the crib carefully. She came to him willingly, her small body warm and solid against his chest. The trust in her gesture made his throat tight with emotion. Baba, Harper said clearly, and Brett's heart skipped. Her second word, and he was here to witness it. Bottle, he guessed. You're hungry. Let's see if Daddy can figure this out. In the kitchen, he found bottles in the refrigerator and a detailed chart on the wall outlining Harper's feeding schedule, nap times, and favorite foods. Sienna had thought of everything, creating a system that would help anyone caring for their daughter. Had she made this chart hoping that someday he might need it? While the bottle warmed in a pot of hot water, Harper entertained herself by dropping wooden spoons from her position on Brett's hip and watching them clatter to the floor. Each time, she looked at Brett expectantly until he picked them up, then immediately dropped them again with a delighted giggle. This is a game to you, isn't it? Brett said, retrieving the spoons for the fourth time. Her answering grin was so much like Sienna's it took his breath away. The bottle was the perfect temperature, and Harper settled into his arms contentedly, her eyes drifting closed as she drank. This was what he had missed, not just the milestones and firsts, but these quiet, ordinary moments that made up the fabric of parenthood. His phone buzzed with Sienna's response to his earlier text. Actions, not words, Brett. She's probably awake by now. Her afternoon bottle is in the fridge. He smiled, typing back one-handed while Harper finished eating. Already on it, she said. Baba, is that new? The reply came quickly. That's her word for bottle. Third word overall. You're witnessing her vocabulary expansion in real time. She's incredible, Sienna. I can't believe she's mine. There was a pause before the next text came through. She's ours. Those two words hit Brett harder than any love poem ever written. She's ours. Not his, not Sienna's alone, but theirs. A family, fractured and broken and held together with hope and uncertainty, but still a family. After Harper finished her bottle, Brett was not sure what came next. He found himself wishing desperately that he had paid more attention during their marriage when Sienna talked about her sister's children, describing routines and developmental stages. Harper solved the dilemma by crawling determinedly toward a basket of toys in the living room. She was faster than Brett expected, moving with focused intensity like someone with places to go and things to explore. For the next hour, they played together on the living room rug. Harper showed him how she could stack 2 blocks before knocking them down with glee. She brought him books, wanting him to read the same picture book about farm animals 6 times in a row. When she got frustrated trying to fit a square block into a round hole, he gently showed her the matching shape and watched her face light up with understanding. When she succeeded, she clapped for herself, and Brett found himself clapping along, both of them celebrating her tiny triumph like it was the most important thing in the world. The front door opened just as Harper was demonstrating her ability to pull herself up on the coffee table. Sienna stood in the doorway, taking in the scene before her. Brett on the floor, surrounded by toys, his expensive suit rumpled and covered in what might be drool. Their daughter showing off her newest skill, both of them completely absorbed in each other. How long has she been able to do that? Brett asked, steadying Harper as she wobbled on unsteady legs. About a week, Sienna said quietly, setting down her purse and joining them on the floor. She's getting close to walking, maybe another month or 2. Will you? Brett's voice caught. Will you call me when she takes her first steps? I know I don't have the right to ask, but I don't want to miss any more firsts. Sienna looked at him for a long moment, taking in his rumpled appearance, the way Harper had apparently wiped her face. On his tie, the complete transformation from billionaire businessman to devoted father sitting on a toy-strewn rug. I got your text, she said finally. And I want to believe you, Brett. But words are easy. Being here for one afternoon is easy. The hard part is showing up every single day, even when the novelty wears off, even when it's 3 in the morning and she won't stop crying, even when you have an important meeting and she's sick and needs you. I understand. Do you? Because parenting isn't just the cute moments and milestone celebrations. It's endless diapers and spit up and sleepless nights. It's toddler tantrums and teenage rebellion. It's putting someone else's needs before your own every single day for the rest of your life. Are you really ready for that? Harper, sensing the serious tone of the conversation, crawled over to Sienna and pulled herself up using her mother's legs. Sienna automatically lifted her, settling Harper on her hip with unconscious grace. I don't know if I'm ready, Brett admitted, but I know I want to learn. I know that holding her feels like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been searching for. I know that reading your journal made me understand what I threw away. And I know that I want to spend every day for the rest of my life proving that I'm not the man who left you. What did I throw away? Sienna asked quietly. Everything, Brett said, without hesitation. Love, partnership, the chance to build something beautiful together, the chance to be the man you believed I could be, instead of the coward I chose to be. Harper babbled and reached for Brett, apparently wanting both parents' attention. Without thinking, Brett and Sienna moved closer, creating a small circle around their daughter. For a moment, they looked like what they could have been all along, what they still might become, a family. I won't lie to you, Sienna, Brett continued, his voice rough with emotion as Harper settled between them on the floor. I'm terrified. I'm terrified of screwing this up, of letting you both down, of becoming exactly what I feared, my father but absent by incompetence instead of choice. But I'm more terrified of losing you again, of missing Harper's childhood, of spending the rest of my life knowing I had everything I ever really wanted and was too stupid and scared to fight for it. Sienna's eyes filled with tears, but she did not look away. If we do this, if we try to build some kind of relationship, it can't be about going back to what we had before. That's gone, Brett. That marriage, those people we were, that's dead and buried. We would have to start over, build something new with who we are now. I know, and it can't happen overnight. Trust isn't given, it's earned, day by day, choice by choice, action by action. I know, he repeated. Just tell me there's a chance. Tell me I haven't destroyed everything beyond repair. Harper chose that moment to lean toward Brett, her arms outstretched, making it abundantly clear she wanted him to hold her. Sienna hesitated for just a heartbeat, then handed their daughter over. Harper settled contentedly against Brett's chest, her small hand grabbing his. Ty, her head tucking under his chin like she had been doing it her whole life. "There's a chance," Sienna whispered, watching them together. "But only if you prove you mean what you say. Only if you show me that Harper isn't just a novelty or a midlife crisis. Only if you become the father she deserves, consistently, even when it's hard." "Especially when it's hard," Brett corrected softly. The next 2 weeks became a masterclass in humility for Brett Carmichael. He showed up at Sienna's loft every single day, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with presence, with willingness to learn, with hands ready to help. He learned that diaper changes were an art form requiring speed and strategy. That Harper had a tell when she was about to spit up, a particular face she made 3 seconds before the inevitable. That bath time was equal parts joy and chaos, with water ending up everywhere except where it was supposed to be. He rearranged his entire life around Harper's schedule. Conference calls happened during nap times. Board meetings got moved to accommodate feeding schedules. His business partner, a man named Richard, who had been with him since the beginning, was not pleased. "Brett, what the hell is going on?" Richard demanded during a video call that Brett took from Sienna's living room floor while Harper napped on his chest. "We've had to reschedule the TechVest meeting 3 times. The Singapore investors are getting frustrated. You're acting like the entire company can wait on your personal life." "It can," Brett said calmly, his hand gently rubbing circles on Harper's back. "My daughter is 12 months old, Richard. I missed the first 12 months of her life. I'm not missing anymore. This is about that baby." Richard's tone was incredulous. "Brett, you can't just abandon your responsibilities because you suddenly discovered you have a kid. Hire a nanny, pay child support, do whatever you need to do, but we have a business to run. And we'll run it," Brett replied, his voice taking on an edge that Richard knew well. "On a schedule that allows me to be present for my daughter. If the Singapore investors can't understand that, we'll find other investors." The call ended tensely, and when Brett looked up, he found Sienna standing in the kitchen doorway. She had heard everything. "That deal was worth $40 million, she said quietly. "I know, and you chose Harper over it. I chose my family over money I don't need." Brett looked down at his sleeping daughter. "I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, Sienna. What I don't have is time with her. What I don't have is these moments. Those are the things I can't buy back." Something shifted in Sienna's expression. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the first fragile seed of hope that he truly meant what he said. The small moments piled up like building blocks. Brett learned that Harper loved to be read to, even though she could not understand the words yet. That she would sit through the same board book about a caterpillar 17 times in a row without getting bored. That she had strong opinions about her outfits and would pull off any hat placed on her head with indignant determination. He learned that Sienna took her coffee with too much cream and not enough sugar. That she painted late at night after Harper went to bed, standing at her easel in an old t-shirt covered in colors. That she still bit her lower lip when she was concentrating. That she hummed while she cooked, usually off-key, usually songs he remembered from their marriage. He learned that watching Sienna mother their daughter was simultaneously the most beautiful and most painful thing he had ever witnessed. Beautiful because she was so naturally good at it, so patient and creative and full of love. Painful because he had missed watching her become this version of herself, had missed the transformation from wife to mother. 3 weeks into his daily presence, Sienna started leaving him alone with Harper for short periods. An hour while she ran to the grocery store, 2 hours while she taught her watercolor class. Eventually, an entire afternoon while she met with a potential client for a big graphic design project. "You have my number," she said, lingering at the door like she was physically pained to leave. "And Autumn's number is on the fridge. And the pediatrician. And poison control. Not that you would need it, but just in case." "We'll be fine," Brett assured her. "Harper and I are going to have a great afternoon. Right, Princess?" Harper, sitting in her high chair with banana smeared across her face, banged her hands on the tray in agreement. "She needs a nap at 2. Sienna continued her mental checklist. "And she won't go down easily. You have to rock her and sing. She likes the one about the mockingbird. And if she cries for more than 10 minutes, check her diaper and her temperature and make sure she's not teething again." "Sienna." Brett stood and gently took her shoulders. "I've got this. Go, do your meeting. Knock them dead with your brilliant designs. Harper and I are going to be absolutely fine." After Sienna left, Brett looked at his daughter. "Well, kiddo, it's just us. What do you want to do?" The afternoon was simultaneously wonderful and terrifying. Harper was delightful, showing him her favorite toys, babbling in her almost language, laughing at his terrible attempts to do silly voices while reading. But she was also a tiny hurricane of chaos. She knocked over a glass of water. She somehow got into the bathroom and unrolled all the toilet paper. She refused to nap despite Brett's best efforts at singing the Mockingbird song. By the time Sienna returned 4 hours later, Brett was exhausted in a way that billion-dollar negotiations had never made him. His hair was a mess from Harper pulling it. His shirt had mysterious stains. There were toys scattered across every surface. And Harper, the tiny tornado herself, was finally asleep on his chest. Sienna stood in the doorway, taking in the chaos. "How did it go?" "She's asleep," Brett said, his voice hoarse from singing. "That counts as success, right?" "Did she nap earlier?" "No. She fought it for an hour. I tried everything. So she's been awake for—" Sienna checked her watch. 6 hours straight. "Apparently. Is that bad?" "It means bedtime is going to be rough tonight. She'll be overtired and cranky." Brett's face fell. "I messed up." But Sienna was smiling. "You survived an afternoon alone with a 12-month-old. Most first-time parents would have called for backup 3 times. You did fine, Brett." The validation felt better than any business award he had ever received. That evening, as predicted, Harper was a nightmare to put to bed. She cried and fought and wanted to be held, but also put down, but also held again. Brett and Sienna tag-teamed, passing her back and forth, taking turns walking and bouncing and singing. Finally, at 9:30, Harper fell into exhausted sleep. Brett and Sienna collapsed on the couch together, both too tired to maintain their usual careful distance. "Is it always like this?" Brett asked. "Sometimes worse," Sienna admitted. "There was a week when she was teething that I got maybe 10 hours of sleep total. I thought I was going to lose my mind." "How did you do it alone?" "I didn't have a choice. You do what you have to do when there's a tiny person depending on you." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound Harper's white noise machine humming from the nursery. "I'm sorry," Brett said quietly, "for all of it, but especially for leaving you to do this alone. You shouldn't have had to be that strong." "No, I shouldn't have." Sienna turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. "But I was, and I survived, and Harper thrived. We built a good life without you, Brett. We don't need you to complete us." The words stung, but he understood what she was saying. "I don't want you to need me. I want you to choose me. There's a difference." "Yes," she said softly. "There is. If you're still watching, if you're still invested in whether Brett can truly transform from the man who ran to the man who stays, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment. Are you Team Second Chance or Team Protect Your Heart? I want to know where you stand, because what happens next is going to test everything." 4 weeks into Brett's daily presence in their lives, the real test came. It was 5:30 in the morning when his phone rang, jarring him awake in his Portland hotel room. Sienna's name on the screen immediately sent adrenaline through his system. "Brett." Her voice was tight with panic. "Harper's sick, really sick. Fever of 103 and she won't stop crying. I'm taking her to the emergency room. I'm on my way." "Which hospital?" "Randall Children's. But you don't have to. You probably have work." "Sienna." He was already pulling on clothes, grabbing his keys. "I'm on my way. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He made it in 12, breaking at least 3 traffic laws. He found Sienna in the pediatric emergency waiting room, looking exhausted and terrified, with Harper limp and flushed against her chest. The sight of his daughter so clearly unwell sent ice through Brett's veins. "How long has she been like this?" he asked, sitting beside them. "Since about 3. Her temperature spiked, and nothing I did would bring it down. The triage nurse said it could be hours before we're seen. It's a busy night. Then we wait." Brett took off his jacket and wrapped it around both of them. Whatever it takes. What followed was the longest 6 hours of Brett's life. Harper alternated between restless sleep and inconsolable crying, her tiny body burning with fever despite the medication. Sienna held her constantly, rocking and singing softly, her own eyes red with exhaustion. Other families came and went around them. A toddler with a broken arm, a teenager with appendicitis, each one seen and treated while they continued to wait. Brett watched Sienna's strength slowly depleting, watched her fighting to stay calm for Harper's sake, even though she was clearly terrified. "Let me hold her for a while," he said gently during hour 3. "You need a break." "I can't. If I put her down, she cries harder. Then I'll hold both of you." And that's what he did. Brett wrapped his arms around Sienna while she held Harper, creating a cocoon of warmth and safety around both of them. Sienna resisted for only a moment before letting herself lean into him, let herself accept the support she had been refusing. At 8:30 in the morning, Brett's phone rang. Richard, his business partner, calling about the board meeting that was supposed to start in 30 minutes. The meeting they had rescheduled twice already, the meeting with investors who were getting impatient. Brett looked at Sienna, exhausted and scared. He looked at Harper, sick and suffering. And he declined the call. He texted Richard instead, "Family emergency. Harper is in the ER. Cancel the meeting. Reschedule at their convenience." The response came quickly. "Brett, this is the 3rd time. We're going to lose this deal." Brett typed back, "Then we lose it. My daughter comes first. This is going to cost us millions. Some things are worth more than millions." He put his phone on silent and turned his full attention back to his family. When they were finally called back to see a doctor at 9:15, Brett went with them, holding Sienna's hand while the doctor examined Harper. The diagnosis was a severe double ear infection that had spread. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough that Harper would need strong antibiotics and careful monitoring for the next 40 to 8 hours. "She's going to be miserable for a few days," Dr. Patterson explained. "Lots of fluids, medication every 4 hours, and someone needs to watch her constantly. If her fever goes above 104, or she shows signs of dehydration, bring her back immediately." In the parking lot afterward, Sienna looked ready to collapse. "I need to call in sick to work. I have 3 client deadlines this week, but I can't. She can't be alone. Let me take care of her," Brett said. Sienna stared at him. "You don't know how to take care of a sick baby. Then teach me. Show me what to do, and I'll do it." "Brett, you've never even been alone with her overnight." "Then it's time I learned." He looked at Harper, still flushed and whimpering in her car seat. "She needs round-the-clock care, and you need sleep. You've been up all night. Let me help. I don't know if I can trust you with this." The words hurt, but they were fair. "Then stay," Brett said. "Come to my hotel suite. There's plenty of space. You can supervise everything I do, and you can actually rest while I take care of her." Sienna looked at him for a long moment, clearly at war with herself. Finally, exhaustion won out. "Okay, but I'm watching everything you do, and if you mess up, if you can't handle it, I'm taking over. Deal?" The next 20 to 4 hours tested every assumption Brett had about his own capabilities. Harper was absolutely miserable. She cried inconsolably. She refused to eat. She could not sleep for more than 30 minutes at a time. Her fever made her clingy and confused, wanting comfort but too uncomfortable to accept it. Sienna showed him how to take Harper's temperature properly, how to measure the liquid antibiotic precisely, how to recognize the signs that would require another hospital trip. Then, despite her obvious reluctance to relinquish control, she went to sleep in the hotel bedroom while Brett stayed with Harper in the living area. The first few hours alone with a sick baby were a baptism by fire. Harper cried whenever Brett put her down, so he walked the length of his hotel suite for what felt like miles, bouncing gently and singing every song he could remember from his own childhood. His voice was nearly gone within 2 hours. When she finally fell asleep around 2 in the afternoon, Brett was afraid to move, terrified of waking her. He stood perfectly still in the middle of his hotel living room, holding his fevered daughter, watching. the rise and fall of her tiny chest, and feeling a protectiveness so fierce it was almost violent. Nothing in his life, no business deal, no acquisition, no billion-dollar success, had ever felt as important as this moment, as keeping this small person safe and comfortable and loved. She woke 20 minutes later, crying again. By evening, Brett had learned to function on pure love and adrenaline. He had mastered the art of one-handed everything, eating cold pizza while Harper dozed against his shoulder, drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago, even answering urgent work emails with his thumbs while she slept fitfully in his other arm. His pristine hotel suite had been transformed. The couch was covered in burp cloths and blankets. The coffee table was cluttered with baby bottles, medicine syringes, and the cheerful chaos of caring for a sick child. His expensive clothes were rumpled and stained with things he preferred not to identify. It was the most exhausted he had ever been. It was also the most purposeful. When Sienna emerged at 8 that evening, expecting to find chaos or crisis, she found Brett on the floor of his hotel living room with Harper finally sleeping peacefully in his arms. He was still wearing his dress shirt from the hospital that morning, now wrinkled and stained beyond recognition. His hair was disheveled from hours of running his hands through it, but his eyes were bright with something that looked like wonder. "How is she?" Sienna whispered. "Better, I think." Brett's voice was rough with exhaustion. Her fever broke about an hour ago. She kept down a full bottle. She's been sleeping for almost an hour now, which is the longest stretch all day. "And how are you?" Brett looked up at her, this woman who had been doing this alone for 12 months, who had faced every crisis and celebration, without backup, who had somehow managed to raise their daughter into the perfect little person currently drooling on his shirt. "I'm understanding why you were so angry with me," he said quietly. "Not just for missing the good parts, the smiles and the milestones, but for leaving you to handle all of this alone. The worry, the responsibility, the constant fear that you're not doing enough or doing it right, the weight of being the only person standing between your child and harm." Sienna sat down beside them carefully, her hand automatically going to check Harper's forehead for fever. It's terrifying sometimes, being the only one who knows her tells, her needs, her little quirks, being the only one responsible for keeping her safe and healthy and happy. "You don't have to be the only one anymore," Brett said, meeting her eyes. "If you'll let me, I want to share it all. The 3 a.m. fevers and the first steps and everything in between." Harper stirred in his arms, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw both her parents, she smiled. A weak but genuine smile that showed her tiny teeth. "Mama," she said clearly, reaching for Sienna. "Dada." Both parents started crying at the same time. Harper's vocabulary was expanding, and she had just claimed them both. Over the next 6 weeks, Brett proved himself through consistency. He showed up every single day, even when Harper was cranky, even when Sienna was distant, even when being present meant sacrificing business opportunities that would have once seemed crucial. He was there for the middle-of-the-night diaper changes, the teething pain that made Harper inconsolable, the afternoon when she learned to climb onto the couch and immediately fell off, giving all of them a heart attack before they realized she was fine. He was there when Harper took her first independent steps, wobbling across Sienna's living room with a look of shocked delight on her face. Brett and Sienna screamed with joy loud enough to startle her into sitting down abruptly, but then she got up and tried again, determined. He was there for the ordinary moments that made up real life. Grocery shopping with a toddler who wanted to grab everything, bath time battles over hair washing, the simple domesticity of making dinner together while Harper played at their feet. And slowly, carefully, Sienna's walls began to come down. It started with small things. She stopped giving him detailed instructions for every task, trusting that he knew Harper's routine. She started accepting his help without questioning his motives. She laughed at his jokes again, real laughter that reached her eyes. One evening, after Harper had gone to bed, they found themselves sitting together on Sienna's couch with a bottle of wine between them, not carefully distant, not performing politeness, just existing in the same space with an ease they had not shared since before the divorce. "I talked to a therapist," Brett said quietly. "Dr. Catherine Meyer. She specializes in family counseling. I've been seeing her individually for a few weeks, working through everything. My fear of becoming my father, my tendency to run when things feel difficult, the ways I sabotaged our marriage. Sienna looked at him with surprise. You're in therapy? I need to understand why I made the choices I made. And I need tools to make better choices going forward. He turned to face her. Dr. Meyer suggested we do some joint sessions to work through what happened, to figure out how to co-parent effectively, and maybe, if you're open to it, to explore whether there's a path forward for us that isn't just about Harper. Us, Sienna repeated softly. I know it's probably too soon. I know I haven't earned that conversation yet. But Sienna, I'm not just here for Harper. I mean, I am. She's the most important thing. But I'm also here for you. I'm here because these past 6 weeks, watching you, being part of your life, again, I've remembered why I fell in love with you in the first place. And I've fallen in love with who you've become. Brett, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to feel the same way. I just needed you to know that this isn't just about being Harper's father. This is about wanting to be your partner again. If you'll have me. Sienna was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing patterns on her wineglass. I started seeing Dr. Meyer too, individually. She thought it would be good for me to process everything before we attempted joint sessions. Brett felt hope bloom in his chest. So, you're open to joint sessions? I'm open to trying. Sienna met his eyes. But Brett, I need you to understand something. Even if we work through everything in therapy, even if you keep showing up every day, even if you prove beyond any doubt that you've changed, that doesn't mean we automatically get back together. Trust isn't a switch that flips back on once certain conditions are met. I know. I loved you so much it nearly destroyed me when you left. I can't go through that again. I won't survive it a second time. Then I'll spend every day making sure you never have to. Their first joint therapy session with Dr. Meyer was 2 weeks later. The therapist's office was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and chairs, arranged in a circle rather than the clinical setup Brett had feared. Dr. Meyer was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a direct manner that put them both at ease. So, she began after introductions, you're here because you share a daughter and you're trying to figure out how to move forward after a painful divorce and a significant breach of trust. Is that accurate? Yes, Sienna said. And Brett, you've told me in our individual sessions that you want more than just co-parenting. You want to rebuild a romantic relationship with Sienna. Is that still true? Yes. Dr. Meyer turned to Sienna. And how do you feel about that possibility? Sienna took a breath, terrified, hopeful, angry, confused, all of it at once. He destroyed me, Dr. Meyer. He walked away from our marriage when I needed him most. And then I found out I was pregnant and had to make an impossible choice between telling him and protecting myself and Harper from potential rejection. That must have been incredibly difficult, Dr. Meyer said gently. Can you help Brett understand what that felt like? It felt like drowning, Sienna said, her voice thick with emotion. Every day of my pregnancy, I carried this secret that got heavier. Every ultrasound, every kick, every moment of joy was mixed with guilt and fear. I kept telling myself I was protecting Harper, but part of me knows I was also punishing Brett, making him miss everything the way he made me miss the future we'd planned. Brett flinched, but did not look away. And Brett, Dr. Meyer turned to him, how do you feel hearing that? Like I deserve every bit of pain I'm feeling, he said quietly. Like the consequences of my cowardice are worse than I ever imagined. I stole Sienna's peace during her pregnancy. I stole my own chance to be there for Harper's birth. And I can never get any of that back. No, you can't, Dr. Meyer agreed. So the question becomes, what can you do going forward? What followed was the most honest conversation Brett and Sienna had ever had. They talked about his father, about the patterns of emotional absence Brett had internalized as a child. They talked about Sienna's abandonment wounds from her own father leaving when she was young, about how Brett's departure had reopened that trauma. They talked about the ways they had failed each other during their marriage. Brett's tendency to shut down during difficult conversations. Sienna's habit of hinting at her needs rather than stating them directly, then resenting Brett for not reading her mind. It was painful and raw and necessary. By the end of the session, they had not fixed anything, But they had started the process of understanding. Over the next 3 months, they attended therapy every week. Sometimes the sessions left them feeling closer. Sometimes they left angry or hurt or exhausted, but they kept showing up. And outside of therapy, life continued. Harper turned 13 months, then 14, then 15. She started walking confidently, then running, her little legs carrying her on adventures around Sienna's loft, while both parents watched with hearts in their throats. Her vocabulary exploded. Mama and Dada were joined by no, and more, and up, and book, and a dozen other words she deployed with increasing sophistication. Brett's business partner Richard finally quit, frustrated with Brett's new priorities. Brett let him go without a fight and restructured his entire company around a model that valued presence over profit. He hired a managing director to handle day-to-day operations and transitioned himself to an advisory role that required minimal travel and flexible hours. Some of his investors grumbled. His company's growth rate slowed, but Brett found that he did not care. He had more money than he needed and less time than he wanted. The math was simple. Sienna's art career flourished. Her pottery sold out at local markets. She landed a major client for her graphic design work, a campaign that would run nationally. She started teaching more classes, and Brett volunteered to watch Harper during them, treasuring the solo time with his daughter. They fell into a rhythm. Not a relationship, not yet, but something more than CO parenting. They had dinner together most nights. They tag-teamed bedtime routines. They texted each other photos of Harper throughout the day. They were building something new, slowly, carefully, on a foundation of honesty instead of avoidance. 6 months after the wedding, where everything changed, Brett asked Sienna the question that had been building in him for weeks. They were at a park, watching Harper play in a sandbox with the intense concentration she brought to everything. The Oregon summer sun was warm, and for a moment, they could have been any normal family enjoying a Saturday afternoon. "I want to ask you something," Brett said, "and I need you to know there's no pressure, no expectation, just a question." Sienna looked at him warily. "Okay. What would it take for you to trust me again? Not intellectually, not in therapy, but in your heart. What would I need to do or be or prove for you to believe that I'm not going to run when things get hard?" Sienna watched Harper dump sand from one bucket to another, over and over, delighted by the simple cause and effect. "I don't know if I can answer that. Trust isn't transactional. It's not like there's a checklist where once you complete certain tasks, I automatically trust you again. I know, but there must be something, some demonstration that would make a difference." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I need to see what you do when something threatens what we're building. I need to see if you choose us or if you choose escape." "What do you mean?" "Right now, things are relatively easy. Harper's healthy. We're getting along. Therapy is helping. But Brett, life isn't always going to be this smooth. There's going to be a moment when something big happens, something that scares you or challenges you or makes you want to run. And what you do in that moment, that's what will tell me who you really are now." They did not have to wait long for that moment. 3 weeks later, Brett received a call that should have been a dream opportunity. A tech startup he had been tracking for 2 years was finally ready to take investment. The deal was massive, potentially worth hundreds of millions. But there was a catch. The founders wanted him personally involved, not just his money, but his expertise. They wanted him in Singapore for 3 weeks of intensive strategizing and structuring. They wanted him yesterday. The timing was catastrophic. It was Brett's scheduled time with Harper. 2 weeks where Sienna had planned to focus on her biggest design project. 2 weeks where Harper would be with him, depending on him, trusting that Daddy would be there. His old business partner, now working independently, called him with barely concealed glee. "This is it, Brett. This is the deal that defines the next decade of venture capital. If you're not on that plane to Singapore tomorrow, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life." Brett looked at the calendar on his wall, covered in Harper's handprints and Sienna's notes. He looked at the photo of his daughter taped to his laptop, her smile gap-toothed and joyful. Then he made a decision that would have been unthinkable 18 months ago. "I'm not coming," he said. "What? You can't be serious." I'm completely serious. I have commitments here that I'm not breaking. Brett, this deal is worth. I know what it's worth. And I'm telling you, I'm not coming. I'll invest remotely if they want my money. But I'm not leaving for 3 weeks. My daughter needs me here. Your daughter? You've known she existed for 6 months. This deal is your entire future. No, Brett said calmly. My daughter is my entire future. This deal is just money. The call ended badly. Over the next 24 hours, Brett received furious messages from investors, from the startup, founders, from business associates who could not believe he was walking away from this opportunity. The deal would happen without him. Other investors would swoop in. He would lose millions in potential returns. His reputation in the venture capital world would take a hit. People would say he had gone soft, lost his edge, prioritized personal life over professional excellence. Brett absorbed it all and did not waver. He did not tell Sienna immediately. He simply showed up at her loft the next morning as planned, ready for his 2 weeks with Harper. It was only 3 days later, when Sienna overheard him on a call with an investor explaining his decision, that she realized what he had sacrificed. That night, after Harper was asleep, Sienna came to his hotel suite. He had been staying at an extended stay place in Portland for months now, and it had slowly transformed from sterile corporate housing into something that felt like home. Harper's toys in the corner, photos on the walls, a life being lived instead of just endured. You turned down the Singapore deal, Sienna said without preamble. Yes, that was going to be huge. Everyone in the business world is talking about it. I know. Why? Brett looked at her, this woman he had loved and lost, and was slowly, carefully earning back. Because 18 months ago, I chose a deal over you, over us, over the possibility of family. And look what that choice cost me. I missed the first year of my daughter's life. I lost the woman I love. I became someone I didn't recognize in the mirror. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the Portland skyline. So, when this deal came up, and it conflicted with being here for Harper, being here for you, the choice was obvious. I already made the wrong choice once. I'm not making it again. You lost millions of dollars, Sienna said, her voice strange. I gained something worth more. I gained proof that I've changed. Not for you, not even for Harper, though she's the most important thing in my life. For myself, because I'm not the man who runs anymore, Sienna. I'm the man who stays. Sienna was crying now, tears streaming down her face. She crossed the room and did something she had not done in over 18 months. She kissed him. It was not a passionate kiss. It was soft and tentative and tasted like salt from both their tears. It was a kiss that said maybe and careful and I'm still scared but also I believe you. When they pulled apart, Brett cupped her face in his hands. I know we're not there yet. I know you're not ready to say you trust me completely. But Sienna, I am so in love with you, with who you are now, with the mother you've become, with your strength and your art and the way you sing to Harper even though you can't carry a tune. I'm in love with our life, this messy, complicated, beautiful life we're building. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I'm scared too, but I'm more scared of living without you than I am of trying again. If this story is touching something in you, if you believe in second chances, earned through real change, I need you to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever seen someone truly transform? Do you believe Brett has proven himself? Type I'm with you, Dr. Phillips, if you're still here, still invested, still hoping these two can make it. Because we're almost there, almost to the moment that will define everything. 2 months later, in the same Japanese garden where Brett had once proposed the first time, he knelt in front of Sienna while Harper played nearby, completely oblivious to the significance of the moment. The garden was beautiful in early autumn, maples just starting to turn gold and red. They had come here several times over the past months, the three of them, and it had become one of Harper's favorite places. Brett had planned this moment carefully. No grand gestures, no orchestra or roses or anything that felt performative. Just the three of them in a place that had meaning. Sienna Blake, he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. 8 months ago, I met my daughter for the first time in a parking lot. I thought that was my second chance, my opportunity to fix what I'd broken. But I was wrong. Sienna was already crying, her hand over her mouth. Every day is a second chance, Brett continued. Every morning I wake up and choose to show up. Every time Harper needs something and I'm there. Every therapy session where we do the hard work. Every ordinary Tuesday night making dinner together. Those are my second chances, and I want to spend the rest of my life earning them. He pulled out a small box, but it did not contain what Sienna expected. Inside was a silver charm, a tiny footprint no bigger than a dime. This is Harper's footprint from her birth certificate, Brett explained, his voice thick with emotion. I wasn't there when she was born. I can't change that, but I want to carry that moment with me for the rest of my life, as a reminder of what I almost missed, as a reminder of what I'll never take for granted again. Sienna was openly sobbing now, and Harper looked up from her exploration of a leaf, concerned by her mother's tears. Mama okay? Harper asked, toddling over. Mama's okay, baby, Sienna managed. Brett pulled out a second box. This one held a simple platinum band. Elegant, but understated. Nothing like the elaborate diamond ring he had given her for their first engagement. This is for you, he said to Sienna, but only if you're ready. Only if you believe I've earned the right to ask. Sienna Blake, will you marry me again? Not because of Harper, not because of guilt or obligation or trying to recreate what we lost, but because I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life, because I want to spend every day for the rest of our lives proving I'm worthy of the gift you're giving me. Harper, sensing the importance of the moment even if she did not understand it, clapped her hands. Dada, Mama. Sienna laughed through her tears. She looked at Brett, really looked at him, seeing not the man who had left, but the man who had come back and stayed and changed and grown, the man who chose them over money, who rearranged his empire around their schedule, who learned to braid hair and change diapers and sing lullabies off-key, the man who had proven, day after day, choice after choice, that love was not a feeling but an action. Yes, she said through her sobs. Yes, I'll marry you. Again, forever this time. Brett slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled both Sienna and Harper into his arms. The three of them stood there in the Japanese garden, wrapped around each other, a family, built from broken pieces and second chances in love that had been tested and had survived. Harper, delighted by the group hug, shouted with joy. More, more, and both her parents laughed because, yes, there would be more. More mornings and challenges and triumphs, more ordinary moments that added up to an extraordinary life. More chances to choose love over fear, presence over escape, family over everything else. 6 months later, they were married in Autumn's backyard. It was a small ceremony, just 20 people, nothing like the elaborate vineyard wedding they'd had the first time. Harper served as flower girl and took her job very seriously, concentrating intensely on each petal she dropped before occasionally eating one. Brett's vows were simple. I promise to choose you when it's easy and when it's hard. I promise to stay when fear tells me to run. I promise to be present, to show up, to do the work. I promise to be the father Harper deserves and the partner you've always needed. Every day, for the rest of our lives, I choose us. Sienna's vows were equally simple. I promise to trust this version of you while honoring my own healing. I promise to build this new relationship instead of trying to resurrect the old one. I promise to believe in second chances while maintaining healthy boundaries. I choose courage over fear, love over self-protection, and our future over our past. When they kissed, Harper clapped enthusiastically, and everyone laughed through their tears. The reception was held in the same backyard, casual and full of joy. Tyler gave a toast that had everyone crying and laughing. Autumn, who had once sworn she would destroy Brett if he hurt Sienna again, welcomed him into the family with genuine warmth. In the middle of the party, as the sun set and lanterns twinkled in the trees, Harper started getting sleepy. Without discussion, both Brett and Sienna went upstairs together to put her to bed in Autumn's guest room. They read her favorite book about the caterpillar for the third time that day. They sang her the mockingbird's song. They both kissed her goodnight and watched her drift off to sleep with her stuffed elephant clutched against her chest. "We made it," Sienna whispered as they stood in the doorway watching their daughter sleep. "We're just beginning," Brett whispered back, pulling her close. 3 years later, the Carmichael home in a Portland suburb was filled with the beautiful chaos of family life. Harper, now 4 years old, was having her birthday party. The backyard was full of her preschool friends. A piñata swayed in the breeze, and cake was smeared on various small faces. Brett, noticeably softer now around the edges, his corporate armor replaced with the comfortable wear of a hands-on father, chased giggling children around the yard. His expensive suits had been replaced with jeans and t-shirts that bore the stains of family life. His perfectly styled hair was often messy from Harper's hands. His calendar was blocked for school pickup and dance recitals instead of board meetings. Sienna, 7 months pregnant with their second child, watched from the porch swing with her sister. "You were right to give him a second chance," Autumn admitted. "I didn't think he could change, but he really did." "People can change," Sienna said, one hand on her growing belly. "But only if they want to badly enough, and only if the person they hurt is willing to do the hard work of healing and trusting again." "Are you happy?" Sienna watched Brett lift Harper onto his shoulders, both of them laughing as they searched for the piñata stick. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be after everything we went through." Brett caught Sienna's eye across the yard, and the look they shared contained everything they had survived and everything they had built. The pain and the healing, the mistakes and the growth, the ending and the new beginning. Harper, from her perch on Brett's shoulders, shouted, "Mama!" "Dada, watch this," as she took a swing at the piñata and missed by a mile. Both parents cheered like she had accomplished something extraordinary, because in their world, everything she did was extraordinary. That evening, after the last guest had left and the yard was cleaned up and Harper was finally asleep, after way too much cake and excitement, Brett and Sienna sat together on their back porch. The stars were coming out, and they could hear the peaceful sounds of their neighborhood settling into night. "Do you ever regret it?" Brett asked quietly, one hand on Sienna's belly where their son, they had just found out, was growing. "All the pain we went through to get here?" Sienna was quiet for a moment. "I regret the pain. I regret what we both lost during those 19 months apart. But I don't regret where we ended up, the us we are now. We couldn't have become these people without going through what we went through. Even when Harper goes through her teenage phase and decides she hates us both," Brett teased. "Especially then," Sienna laughed. "You're going to be one of those dads, aren't you? The overprotective kind who interrogates her first boyfriend?" "Absolutely. I have a lot of lost time to make up for." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin to dance in their backyard. Their life was not perfect. They still had disagreements. They still went to therapy regularly to maintain the tools they had learned. There were still moments when old wounds ached, but they were real, messy and flawed, and working at it every single day. Inside the house, they could hear Harper talking in her sleep, probably narrating some elaborate dream adventure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. A preschool drop-off where Harper would likely refuse to wear shoes. A client meeting for Sienna. A doctor's appointment to check on the baby. The ordinary, extraordinary business of family life. Brett thought about the man he had been 3 years ago, standing in a Boston penthouse, hollow with success, convinced that freedom was the answer. That man had no idea what he was missing, had no concept of what wealth actually looked like. True wealth was Harper's laugh when he did funny voices during story time. It was Sienna humming off-key while she painted. It was Sunday morning pancakes and dance parties in the kitchen and family, movie nights where they all fell asleep on the couch in a pile. True wealth was being chosen and choosing in return every single day. "Thank you," Sienna said softly, "for coming back, for doing the work, for becoming the man I always believed you could be." "Thank you for letting me," Brett replied, "for giving me a chance I definitely didn't deserve, for loving me enough to make me work for it instead of making it easy." "Love should never be easy," Sienna said. "It should be worth fighting for." As they headed inside to check on Harper one more time before bed, Brett smiled at the thought of all the ordinary, extraordinary days still ahead. Birthday parties and scraped knees and school plays and teenage drama, and eventually, far in the future, Harper, bringing home someone special and him having to remember not to be the terrifying, overprotective dad. He had once thought happiness was something you achieved, a destination you arrived at through success and acquisition and climbing higher and higher until you reached the top. Now, he knew better. Happiness was something you chose, again and again, in the small decisions that nobody else ever saw, choosing to get up at 3 a.m. with a sick child, choosing patience over frustration, choosing to say I love you even when it was hard, choosing to show up every day for the people who mattered most. Brett Carmichael had wanted the whole world once. It turned out he just wanted home, and home was right here, in a house that was too small and too messy and absolutely perfect, with a wife who challenged him and loved him and made him better, with a daughter who looked at him like he hung the moon, with a son on the way who would get the father Brett had learned to be instead of the one he had feared becoming. This was the empire that mattered, the only one worth building. So here's my question for you. Would you have made the same choice as Sienna, to forgive and trust again after such deep hurt? To give someone a second chance when they shattered you the first time? Second chances are possible, but they require something from both people. The person who caused the harm has to do real work, not performative apology, not grand gestures, but consistent, daily choice to be better, to show up, to prove through action that change is real. And the person who was hurt has to be willing to heal, to do their own work, to set boundaries while also creating space for growth, to trust carefully while also trusting bravely. That's the hard truth about second chances. Both people have to transform. Both people have to choose courage over fear. Both people have to believe that love, real love, is worth fighting for. Your thoughts matter to this community. Drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, or just type, "I'm with you, Dr. Phillips." Share your story if you've been through something similar. Your experience might inspire someone else who's standing at a crossroads, trying to decide whether to risk their heart again. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that people really can change, that families can be rebuilt, that broken things can be made beautiful again. And remember this, second chances are earned, not given. But when both people are willing to do the work, when both people choose love over fear every single day, those second chances can become something even more beautiful than the first chance ever was. Thank you for being here. Thank you for investing in this story. Thank you for believing, like I do, that love is always worth fighting for. Until next time, this is Dr. Phillips reminding you that your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be ahead. You just have to be brave enough to turn the page.